love, nothing but respect. You know what we do, what we don't, what we is, what we isn't, and what we is here today, bringing you guys and girls One Piece chapter 1089 live discussion. Also, just while I'm setting something up, bear with me for 2 seconds. I got with me at the moment though, Kuma, aka the Strawman. Say hello, my guy Kuma.
Hello.
Hello.
Glad to be here.
And hang on, I've just screwed up the one new thing that I have added to this stream. Hang on a second.
Nice.
Or is it just not going to let me do it because it's specifically in streaming mode? That is also an extreme possibility that I didn't think about. Hang on. Off to technical wonders already, are we? Okay, hang on.
Technology is both a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, I definitely get the curse part.
As are the people who use it. Oh, Jesus!
Alrighty. Does this work now? Hang on. Oh, why is this not wanting to work for me? Hang on.
You need one of those like little technological ditties that plays in the background.
I had it working like a minute ago. Hang on. This is gonna drive me up the wall now.
The first episode that I'm back in.
Oh, I know, right? I've got so many different tabs open as well. Hang on. I'm just gonna...
Should have done some tarot card readings first to see what the percentage chance was this on.
Oh, I know. The worst part is, I had it working, and then just in the process of the last 30 seconds setting it up, it's just decided to cease to exist. Hang on.
But you have tested it with the stream mode on though, right?
Yeah, I did. And it was working. Like I said, it was working like 30 seconds ago. It's almost like it's just decided in the last like 10 seconds that Discord is no longer an actual site, if that makes sense. Because it's supposed to be a window capture. Yo, Ged,
You can
good
say
to see
that
you,
it
dude.
got Lelouchian.
Oh, dude, it
use
straight
that
up
term
did.
now.
Straight up did.
Can we make that a meme?
Hang on, I'm just gonna add a new source and do it that way. Let's see if that works it.
Hello, Zekazik.
Add a source. New source. Alright, I've just done it and it's completely butchered the way I wanted to do it, but that's okay because I can adjust it regardless. Hang on, bear with me. Why this has decided to do this now, I will never, ever know.
Cue the Jeopardy music. Ding, ding, ding.
Alright. Bear with me, guys. I'm going to do some on-the-fly editing here. Very professional, as you can see.
Aw, snap.
Ooh.
Careful, bro. That Discord information is supposed to be cute.
There we go. How's that? Does that look better now? That's how it was supposed to be like 30 seconds ago. Just me pressing every button wildly, causing all sorts of problems. But we're here now. It only took...
Oh, there we go.
It only took 5 minutes. But here we are. Kuma, you're on the stream now. Hello, welcome. At least you can see yourself
Very nice.
lighting up when you talk, right? It's the little things. It's the little things.
I'm glad you actually mentioned that because my camera was plugged in like 2 seconds ago.
Better to be safe than sorry. Better to be safe than sorry. That being said, we're here today talking One Piece chapter 1089. this was a damn good chapter. We're going to have with us a few other people drop by a little later on to talk chapter. So be sure to, stick around and see people drop in and out. I definitely have theories about this chapter and theories about this arc in general at the moment. But first thing I've got to ask is, as always, Kuma, what were your thoughts on the chapter? Good chapter, bad chapter? Let me know. What are your general thoughts of the chapter?
The first word that came to mind after I finished reading this chapter was abrupt. Now, again, that could be viewed as a good thing or a bad thing, considering on people's opinions on how this current arc has gone. But overall, I would have to say this chapter for me, while it did kind of draw some really easy and quick conclusions, we also did get some in-depth explanations, which also added a lot more to the world building. So in that sense, I would give this one fairly a high rating. I'd give it like a 7 out of 10.
I definitely understand what you mean. This was a short, like, the chapter was over in the blink of an eye, but the chapter also had me hyped the whole way through, but for very different reasons. I think the thing that probably had me the most interested at first is the earthquake in this chapter. And I've got the viz up at the moment because the TCB scans and OP scans and that dropped earlier, very different implications between the two. I'm not going to lean on saying which one is more or less correct. Even though the viz is the official release, the viz has been wrong in the past on translations. I'm not a translator. I don't read and speak Japanese, or at least I don't anymore. See, when you stop using a skill, you lose a skill. But what I will say the key difference is in the official viz, it seems like what happens is there's an entire worldwide earthquake that happens on the 6th day. Whereas with the previous releases, it seemed like there was an earthquake that was radiating out across the world over those 6 days.
Yeah, no, that is a pretty significant difference on terms of scope.
Yes. Personally, I actually like the idea of it radiating out because it makes more sense for that translation, even though that's not the viz, based on the events of this chapter, considering the first page is Fuchsia Village, and there is no earthquake happening at Fuchsia Village in the first page. And then we see the subsequent pages of the earthquake affecting all around the world, and the chapter's midway point ends with Fuchsia Village starting to feel the effects of the earthquake. So
Fuchsia Village in the East Blue, they're pretty far off from the Goa Kingdom, right?
So they are on the Goa Kingdom. They aren't that...
Yeah, I know they're included in the Goa Kingdom, but you have to get through the Grey Terminal first to get to them, right?
So if you think of it like an L shape, the top is Goa Kingdom. Going down the L is the Grey Terminal. If you keep going over, you hit the mountain, which is where Dadan and that live. And then over the mountain and off to the side a bit is Fuchsia Village. Okay. So it's one mountain away from Grey Terminal, down and out, if that makes sense.
Okay, yep. No, I see it. I just searched it up on the wiki too.
Yeah.
Thank you, other people's knowledge.
But the reason why I think this actually makes such a big difference, and I sort of got into this a little bit on TikTok over just some random stuff, because I've seen people in the past, and I never throw my thoughts on it because it's sort of irrelevant. Like it's Schrodinger's cat of it either is or it isn't, but it's both at the same time. How big the One Piece planet is, because you've got countries like Alabasta that are bigger than Australia within the confines of the Grand Line, but at the same point in time, there's not a perfect map of the world for us to completely understand where and what everything is compared to each other. But the average travel speed for an earthquake On the low end is about 6 kilometers a second. On the high end, 10. Average that out, it's about 8 kilometers a second. If you took that and the interpretation that this earthquake took 6 days to travel across the planet, and mind you, this is happening in the middle-ish point, or the early middle-ish point of the Grand Line, right? The Lucia Kingdom is one island away from Alabasta. Right? And the thing is, right, because you've got to remember, Ace accidentally went there straight after leaving Alabasta. So it was one of the log post islands that connected to Alabasta. So it's that early on in the Grand Line, if that makes sense. And then if you keep following down that path of the Grand Line, it's implied that you would reach Kamabaka Queendom. And then if you go past Kamabaka Queendom, that's when you're starting to get to, the end of that stretch before you have to go through Fishman Island and stuff like that. Just based on context clues and geography from, like, say, the Revs when they first showed up before they made it to Kamabaka Queendom. But also you've got the Ace cover story where you find out that this is the first island Ace went to after leaving Alabasta. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, from a geography standpoint, it's early half of the Grand Line, right? Which makes a lot of sense. So if that quake happens in the Grand Line and radiates out, the first places that'll be hit are the 4 blue seas closest to the Grand Line, and then Reverse Mountain before reaching the likes of, say, Merijoa and then the further out kingdoms, which does actually make a lot of sense considering the first island that we see feeling the effects of the quake is Logtown, which we know is right next to Reverse Mountain. Then we have a no-named island in the South Blue. We have Kano Country in the West Blue, which we don't know where... So, the only island out of these 3 that we definitively know where it is Logtown, right? But Kano Kingdom, based on context clues and the One Piece world map that Oda drew as a sketch, it's implied to be very close to the Grand Line as well in the South Blue. So all these islands are like immediate islands once you leave the Calm Belt, essentially. Right? And so if you keep following that line of logic, the next places that we see Laboon at Reverse Mountain, which is happening in tandem, arguably, with the likes of Logtown, which makes a lot of sense, right? We see it start to affect Water 7, and we know Water 7 is very close to the other half of the Grand Line, as of the Red Line, which would be the entrance of the New World, where Merijoa is, right? And then under Water 7, it's implied, so it's hitting roughly all these areas at the same time, but the radiation in, like, the radial distance of this, it's happening in the order of islands that are sort of closer to it that we're seeing, right? With the furthest island that we've seen it hit so far being Wano, which we have no idea how close Wano is to the beginning of the New World, because we followed the log post to Dressrosa and then went on Zou and Whole Cake Island. We didn't have any direction of where we were going. We just went to those islands with no concept of where we were traveling, if that makes sense. Which puts Wano and the current islands we're at no concept of where it actually sits in the Grand Line, or in the New World, if that makes sense. Because...
Okay, I'm following.
So it's like, if you think of it like you've got a ball of water with the Grand Line around it, right? You drop a drop of water in the middle of the Grand Line. That ring of water radiates out. It's hitting the islands immediately in its vicinity first. Then we see it hit the ends of the Red Line, right? And then by the end of it, We're seeing it finally start to hit places like the Goa Kingdom, which are on the far stretches. So it took, from that mindset, if you follow it being, it took 6 days for that process to happen, it took 6 days for it to reach the Goa Kingdom, meaning it took about 6 days traveling at the speed of an earthquake, which is 8 kilometers a second, to hit a quarter of the size of the planet in a radial line, if that makes sense. I know that's like a really long-winded way to try and scale the size of the planet, but I brought that up in a stream. Someone else threw some math in, and we were getting some pretty crazy sizes that would be, because it being 8 kilometers a second would pretty much put the One Piece planet at the size of the sun, the real, like our real sun, which is wild.
Yeah.
But I mean, they've also got all these crazy giant countries and miniature countries, and you can never see one island from the next, so who knows. But
Just a sorry, go
no,
ahead.
well, I was gonna just say I wouldn't be doing my due diligence as a content creator if I didn't at least talk about it and address it.
Fair, that's fair.
As you were saying.
Yeah, I don't know. I find it interesting as well because like I understand how you have the West Blue, North Blue, and East Blue. Like their reactions to it is pretty tame, but from like just this scene here from the South Blue getting hit by the after effect and seeing the tsunami coming in for them,
Mm,
I don't know. It kind of shows to me of like also a cool version of the demographic as to how these countries are actually seen too, right? Because it was considered that the East Blue is the most peaceful, and when you look at their image, it's like,
pretty
okay,
tame.
buildings are shaking, but nothing has actually fallen, which is good. And then you get the picture of the South Blue, and you see how these guys are pretty much screwed no matter where they go, because a tsunami is definitely nothing to laugh at.
Mm,
And then again, you go into the West Blue. Again, their buildings are shaking, but they're pretty much stable from then on in, as well as the North Blue. So it's also showing how just rugged and also vulnerable you are down in the South Blue, which is why it's considered as the worst of the four.
oh, definitely. And actually, just speaking on it for a really random moment, the East Blue image here, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the left corner of the East Blue, we see a woman with some headphones on. Is that
Yeah,
is that fake Nami from Return to Sabity?
yeah, she has the polka dots.
The polka dots, the same head shape, the same bad fringe. I think that may be fake Nami.
I also want to point out that in the right side corner too, there's a guy whose face is
Completely
completely
blacked
blacked
out.
out.
Yeah,
That's also very sketch.
I thought that was weird, and like it's also really important to note, right? We still have a huge ongoing mystery in the East Blue that hasn't been addressed about how Stelly became king, because the previous monarch mysteriously disappeared.
Hmm. And
So
the clothes this guy's got on is a little bit like I'm low key seeing it because he's got stripes on his arms,
yeah.
and he's also got buttons in the middle. He looks kind of like a low key jester, or like those pajamas that the royalty wear.
Mm. I mean, also a sidebar, like these people could actually be like we may not be aware of it. They actually may be part of the Barto Club. Um, since
Yeah, the
Bart,
guy with the chain in the right side corner.
yeah, since Bartolomeo was actually in charge of the criminal organization, he was in charge of like 50 countries in the East Blue. Like we talk about Arlong being the most wanted man in the East, but the most threatening people in the East were
Mm,
Barto and Smoker, realistically speaking.
yeah. It's just interesting with Bartos. Like, I understand that he did come later in the story, so then again, he wasn't brought into the same light as Arlong. But yeah, considering Bartos' reach, but no, the thing is that Bartolomeo he did take over cities and stuff, but he also kept them quote unquote in line,
Yeah.
as opposed to Arlong who was just ransacking and
See,
also like again, Arlong did quote unquote take care of his city, but he was nowhere near as he had
Barto.
plans afterwards. That's what I mean. Like Arlong had ambitions that surpassed just staying on an island and being content. Bartolomeo, he just kind of found these places and he did take over them, but he also kind of like just maintained the status quo within them
This
for his
is
own benefit, of course.
this is going to be the most disrespectful thing I think I ever say, but Bartolomeo is just the discount beige, right? Wasn't
Yeah,
really going
beige the discount Doflamingo.
yeah, it's the it's the Coke Pepsi LA Ice combination, right? Just going
You
down.
forgot about the no-name brand.
Yeah. That comes right at the end. Right at the end. Um, but yeah, so I also like that we actually sort of see some of these countries, for example, Kano country, getting to actually see it. I'm actually really interested in the Kano country because Kano being from the West Blue, but obviously being inspired of Chinese design, I've always wondered if they have a connection to Wano. Even if, like, in the Void Century, Kano was a branch country of Wano, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
No, definitely it makes sense.
Especially with the naming scheme, the aesthetics, and like I understand the real world um, inspirations for them and their connections, but in world, it's like there's a lot of similarities there. Also, being interested to see whether or not Sai made it home or not, because at this point in time, it kind of implies that Sai's out at sea, and last time we saw him, he was at the Reverie.
Last time we saw him, he turned St. Charles into like a spiraled pancake.
Oh, he turned him into butter, the butter boy. Um, that
Nah, man, butter doesn't flatten like that.
yeah, fair point. Um, that being said, actually, I really want to see his bounty. I think Sai's gonna have a 500 mil bounty next time we see him.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the big three, like, because again, for the big three in the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, you are looking at Bartolomeo, Sai, and Cavendish. I guess you could also. No, you can't really count. I mean, I guess they could technically be the top five because Hyrudin is definitely.
I
I can never
think
pronounce the name right. Is
Hajrudin.
it a Hajru
Hajrudin.
or Hyrudin? That's
Hajrudin.
how they announce it in the anime.
Mm. It
Yeah, and Ideo, but again, like Ideo also like Ideo started off with an amazing like
okay.
first feat because he blasted a giant off the arena, and then again you had Hyrudine punch Makviz, who was like a 10,000 ton guy.
Yeah. It's.
But again, it's like they don't.
I tell you what. Just while we're talking about this, I'm gonna try and bring it up, right? But so recently, I've been doing. Oh, where would it be? It'd be in my One Piece folder. No, it wouldn't. That folder is old and filled with other stuff. I've been going through a bunch of. I haven't gone through a bunch of. I've been trying to prep for a lot of content by doing a lot of research on older events and stuff like that, right? With with Sai, we actually have an image where it's heavily implied that when he broke Don Shinjiao's head, he was actually using Rio. Because you actually see the aura flowing around the outside of his foot. But this is just before it's introduced and strictly stated to us what Rio is. The anime makes it look like smoke, but the manga, it's actually portrayed the same way as like when Luffy flows it around his hands. And I've got the images for it here somewhere.
To me, I've always seen it as like, again, like the is it the eight fist or I'm sorry, what does I practice again?
The Huppos. No, it's a Hupposai Navy, but it's the I forget the name of the fist for it, but I know what you mean.
I know. Where is it? Style. Here we go. Oh no, that's not it. Abilities and powers. Oh, Hashoken. There we go.
Hashoken, there we go.
Yeah, because I mean, the way that Hashoken, in comparison to Rio, is like I always saw Rio as more of like a flowing sort of power that, like, is supposed to go inside something and damage it from inside out, while Hashoken, instead, it sends vibrations from the outside in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, again, like, because uh again, you have, like, I always referenced it to like hitting a gong or something like that, that after you hit it, then you get all this extra, like, this
All the
this
effects.
vibrating damage that comes after.
So I actually think there's slightly different, like there's some nuances to them. Damn it. Okay, I found my folder. The one
Nice.
file that I would actually like to show, I haven't transferred over, which is annoying.
Nice.
Oh, actually, wait. Hang on. Ooh, there may be another spot where I've put it. Hang on. You can tell I'm definitely prepared today.
You can tell that I'm actually awake, maybe.
It's fair play. Fair play. I don't know how I'm going. I'm living on a hope and a prayer right now. I give up on looking for it for the moment. I'll organize it for another stream at some point.
It's all good.
Um,
We've kind of branched off topic anyhow.
yeah, but yeah, no. So the point being, like, you see the aura around him. You can bring up the exact panel. It's in the panel that Don Jinjiao is specifically saying to him, your foot can now break the ice sheet continent. You actually see the Rio floating around the foot.
Yeah.
And to me, that could even imply that part of what it is unconscious Rio being used by Don Chinjiao to split the continent. Because when he tries to open the continent after his head's been rearranged, he never uses Haki when he headbutts the floor. So
Yeah.
he's broken his head and he's just slamming his forehead on it with no Haki. When he Hakis up his head in older age, Luffy rearranges it back to how it was, and then when his head comes back to normal, Luffy knocks him out in that punch, so he's not, like, he's unconscious. But the Haki just on his head alone, when he falls, he unconsciously still has the Haki on it, and you can see it, and it taps the Colosseum and splits the Colosseum in half. So it's like, it amplifies it heaps, but it's also, he can't control it. It's like, it's active when it's active, but we know on top of that, he's also got the martial art technique of shockwaves, and then you see on top of that Sai can potentially use Rio as well, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe what it is you've got this really ridiculous feat where they go to the ice sheet continent, and instead of it just being they're that strong and they've got the armament Haki to do it, it's they use Rio to emit Haki into it while creating a shockwave with their martial art, and that splits the continent. You know what I mean? Like, there's some potential there for some more layers in what's actually happening in that situation. All of that was a huge tangent. I can't even remember how we got onto that.
Because I mentioned Sai.
Yeah. See, I've normally got eggs here just telling me, like, we're not talking about this. Shut up. I don't get to rant.
Exactly.
So, we then get to see... Also, I didn't notice this in my first read through, but we also see prisoners in Impel Down climbing up from the bottom of the jail floor because of the earthquake. I've got no idea what the implications are of that, but
well,
as you were saying.
Oh yeah, no. Well, I would say the reason why the Impel 6 prisoners are like having a little bit more of a freak out and why they're trying to climb is because maybe the depth of that island deleting attack. Maybe it did go all the way down or something like that.
Oh!
And because the rupture started from the bottom up, these guys are getting the worst of it.
What if they're flooding? Because the sea level was pretty much equal with where Impel Down was already.
Oh.
If the water level's risen by 1 meter, it could have risen by 1 meter, and then they may be taking water in, flowing in through all the levels.
Yeah, those guys could be screwed.
That actually could be a huge possibility there for a problem.
Yeah, because maybe some of the prisoners are so desperate that they actually break out again.
I mean, there always could be a breakout happening, regardless, in the sense of we don't know what's happening with Doflamingo, and we know that Weevil's supposed to be going there, so it's kind of like, like, I mean, and I'm gonna get to this in a minute, right? But this has so many repercussions that could potentially affect people that it was never intended to, and events that it never intended to. For example, right, say Green Bull has beaten Weevil, but hasn't accompanied him to Impel Down, and there's just some random Marines taking him to Impel Down, right? For the handover.
And then Weevil gets freed from that. I can see that.
We've now got Weevil free at Impel Down, with the likes of Doflamingo and other people in Impel Down that he could break out for help.
And knowing that Doflamingo's a smart man and Weevil is a little bit lacking in the brain cells, definitely Doflamingo would be able to sway him into doing something stupid.
Yeah.
AKA freeing Doflamingo.
And it's not just the it's not just see that'd be the other thing, right? Another Impel Down breakout in relation to one of Whitebeard's sons. Right? And the problem the problem is there as well. You got Dofi and Crocodile and their organizations being no different. Like Baroque Works breaking out of prison was no different to if the Doflamingo family tries to break out of prison here, right? There also is very potentially some other big name people down there. For example, we sort of forget about this a bit, but CP0 fought off screen for a week against the Big Mum Pirates that were at Wano. And we never got a conclusion to that. So those Big Mum Pirates could have been beaten and taken to Impel Down as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces that we've got no concept for where they actually are on the board at the moment. You know what I mean? And like the interesting thing about this is like Impel Down's on the sea floor. We know the sea floor at least at Fisherman Island, it's 10,000 meters down, right? So you've got 10,000 meters down, people feeling the earthquake. We've got people on the top, like we've got the Celestial Dragons here at the top of the Grand Line, which in Oda's notes is supposed to be 10,000 meters in the sky, right? So we've got people, you know, all over the place feeling it. You've got Wano feeling it, which is supposed to be like 25 kilometers up in the sky, since like Zunisha wasn't as tall as the top of Wano, right? So it's like you've got all these people all over the world at all various heights, all feeling the same effects all at once, which is
I'm actually
pretty wild.
surprised that we didn't get a panel of the Fishman Island.
I mean, the problem is there with the Fishman Island. What happens if the bubble pops?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Like, why didn't we get a glimpse of that, right? Like, we got a glimpse of higher up, but we never got a glimpse of the very down low.
Oh!
Heck, could you imagine being a fishman, just minding your own beeswax, and suddenly, like, a crater the size of a moon ends up popping right in your doorstep?
What are we talking about? Im has a giant straw hat, right?
Yes.
Fishman Island within 1 year will be destroyed by a man with a straw hat.
Oh, don't do this to me, New World. It makes too much sense.
Like even though it's just happened off screen, we could cut back to it at any moment, and that could have been what caused. Like Im could be sitting up here looking at the straw hat at the moment that Lelucia Kingdom gets destroyed in a flashback. You know what I mean?
Oh, so does that mean Shiarly saw Emu?
Because she never saw someone's face. She just saw a silhouette of someone with a straw hat and Fishman Island in ruins.
Oh, wait. Didn't Shiarly see an actual, like, person or
She
the
saw
silhouette of a person?
in the anime they show Luffy.
Oh, the anime. Never mind.
In
Then
the
I was thinking
manga,
of the game.
it's a silhouette of a person with a straw hat. But I mean, Imu is just the silhouette man at this point. So
No, he's got two eyes, so that's not technically a full silhouette.
yeah, true. But still, that could be a potential connection there. I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense for them not to focus on it, in my opinion. But I mean,
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean.
Oda does these things though, where he shows
the
you
thing
stuff
is
and then
literally
goes back to
going.
it.
Yeah, it's literally going down to the very depths of the ocean. You'd imagine the people living down there would actually be the most affected.
Which let's get
Isn't
on.
that
Let's get onto this part of the topic, right? This is identical to Enies Lobby,
yes, very much so.
right? What accompanies Enies Lobby?
Justice.
Three things. One, right? Enies Lobby is perpetually day. However, over
Oh,
here,
yeah.
it's raining and overcast, which means that what causes the hole may be separate to the weather phenomenon. Right? That is a big thing to disassociate from each other there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that means we still need another explanation for why Enies Lobby is permanently day.
I'm also wondering as to how Eni's lobby has the island in the middle of itself now.
So this was a sub theory I had, right? We see the Mother Flame or Mother Frame do this to Lelucia Kingdom. This looks identical to what happened to Enies Lobby, right? I raised to you that in the Void Century, the previous user of the Barrier Nomi tried to protect their country from it being destroyed, resulting in Enies Lobby. Because if you actually look at Enies Lobby, it actually has ancient buildings all over it, and then Marines have built new structures that are white and clear in front of the old buildings.
It's just that do you think the Barrier no Mi has that kind of potent defensive power?
I mean, Oda specifically said the point of the barrier is it can protect against anything. Personally,
Yeah.
I think there isn't a thing in the story other than Haki that it can't defend against. But the only thing is the range of it. I would say this could be an example of someone awakening the barrier fruit and turning the entire island into a barrier. Hence why it's got a spherical shape to the island. If that makes sense.
Okay.
And for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, I'm going to bring it up just for a brief second here, right? So we've got Enies Lobby here, and Enies Lobby has a straight line down the middle, and then this island floating in the middle, right? What could happen, right? We know that this attack like rains down from above, right? We also know that this island is only protected. So, like, if you actually look at Enies Lobby, it's not a straight line that goes across. The bridge... remember, there's a bridge connection. The whole island's being held up by the small island at the front, right? And then the island's been severed, and then there's another small island off to the side where they've got the Tower of Justice on. Right?
Yeah.
So, you could have had someone on the entry to the island, the little part of the island that holds a big island up, use the barrier to protect themselves, and then use their awakening on the rest of the island to make two barriers to protect the island from being completely eradicated. The crazy thing about that is, and like, mind you, this isn't my theory. Like, that first part's my theory, this next part's not my theory. But if you haven't, check out O'Hara's theory. That's an English translation of a I think it's a Uteron, the Japanese theorist, who
Yep.
went on a huge theory about the One Piece being underneath Enies lobby, based on hints and context clues and Easter eggs in covers of volumes. Right?
Okay.
If you haven't checked that theory out, I highly recommend go do it. It's like a 20-30 minute watch. There's a lot of craziness involved in it. Super interesting, right? Super interesting. But the thing about it is, whether that's true or not, it is very unique in the way in which it stands out, if that makes sense. So
Especially because it is levitating off the bloody ground.
yeah, so to me, that would be what happens if, say, the mother frame activates and destroys an island, but someone's protecting it with the barrier fruit, because it's a perfect sphere around the island, so it just perfectly protects it. And then when it's undone, it's just on that Looney Tunes goofy shit, where it's just like, oh, it's just managing to hold up, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that was point one. Oh, sorry, that was point two. Point one was the whole island always being light. Point three is, if the world government, and we know the world government was formed after the Void Century and the Marines were found as part of that, right? If the world government beat the Ancient Kingdom, would it not make sense to build an outpost over the Ancient Kingdom?
Yeah, and Enies lobby is literally a gate. So
And also is part of the Tub Current Triangle, which is a huge void in the world. Like, for example, we don't know of any islands in the Tub Current outside of Impel Down, Water 7, and Marijua, right? As weird as it is, it would make a lot of sense. Even if Enies lobby isn't where Laugh-Tale is itself, it would actually make a lot of sense for Laugh-Tale to be in that triangle where no one can get in. Because it's probably the only point in the world at the moment where no one has any form of access. And we also know that Roger, before making it to Laugh-Tale, was just leaving Water 7.
yeah, that was kind of odd, honestly.
In that flashback. So, like, it could make a lot of sense that it's like the world government put a monopoly over this ancient kingdom, made it illegal to, like, research it, but also literally built a barrier around it. And they may not be able to make it in there themselves, but they sure as shit stopped other people making it in there too.
Yep, the trope of if I can't have it, neither can you.
Yeah.
Yo, I just joined. That theory is pretty good, bro.
Yo, yeah, dude. It's built on another theory, obviously, but like from a geography standpoint, to me, it makes a lot of sense that it's like either you got to look at the world government, and it's either they won the Void Century conflict, or they just happen to outlast their opponents. And like, if they won, it would make sense for them to set up stuff around the Ancient Kingdom, especially since we have Im, who specifically was like, we rounded up all the poneglyphs as well. If it wasn't for Nefertari D. Lily, we would have like completely blocked it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas the alternative theory there for me is like, the Ancient Kingdom was so outnumbered that they couldn't win, but they weren't going to lose. So the Void Century itself is like, they use, like, the awakening of Lady Toki's fruit is sending every other country 100 years in the future. And that Void Century is a Void Century because it was 100 years of prep time for the Ancient Kingdom to make the poneglyphs and stuff like that.
I kind of like that theory. Almost like a callback to the years of prep time for the raid on Wano.
Yeah. Well, because, I mean, there are cultures that aren't affiliated with the world government that also have the Void Century. So
Right.
it affected every culture in the world. Like Tontadas, long-armed, long-legs, fishmen, everyone was void for 100 years. it's like it's kind of hard to do that unless everyone got sent 100 years in the future. You know what I mean? And
Right.
since Toki had the fruit and existed in the Void Century, she could have inherited the fruit from the user that made everyone else go flying in the future, which is why she knew when she jumped into the future to look for a certain time period. The problem is with One Piece, there's just way too many crazy abilities and crazy theories. And it's going to be like super hard to like get it as a theory. But we also know Oda's like got on the record saying like no one's close yet. So it's like you got to think out there in some of the weirdest possible ways that is goofy to try and like predict any of this shit.
Yeah, that's one thing that sells me on some theories. It's just like it's when they're just like so Oda, like Oda would so do that. That's what sells me, bro.
Yeah. That being said, Kuma, this is Young, this is Kuma.
Yo, how's it going, bro?
Nice to meet you, Mike. Nice to make your acquaintance, bro.
Trying to pretend you're Aussie there, are you? I'll allow it. So, that being said, you've got the earthquake that happened here. The entire sea level rose by 1 meter, right? The official viz makes it sound like the earthquake hit the entire world all at once and the earthquake rose the sea, whereas the scans that came out before, as I was saying earlier on in the video, the scan translations were making it sound like the earthquake radiated out from here and the resulting tsunamis rose the sea level by a meter. It's hard to lean on one over the other. Like I said earlier, it's like translating stuff from a different language. Some are going to be more right, some are going to be less right. They also may not care about the semantics of it as much. And it could always be retconned in volume release, as opposed to the week-to-week translations we get at the moment, once more context is added to these things. Then we move over and we finally cut back to Egghead Island, and I'm so happy we're back at Egghead. I've already asked Kuma this, but Young, I haven't had the chance to ask you. What are your thoughts on the chapter?
I liked it. I think it was. I was expecting it to have like a lot of fighting and feats going on, but even with what we got, I was definitely hyped. Of course, with the hole that resembles Ennie's lobby, it got me theorizing a bunch in my little reaction video. Yeah, I really liked it. It was definitely a. I wouldn't. I wouldn't necessarily say 10 out of 10. I'd say more like 9 out of 10, just because it was a bit slow. But yeah, I liked it.
I definitely liked. Like, I liked the entire chapter. I was hype about the entire chapter. I'd probably give it more like a 7 out of 10. Because, like, the stuff that I got, I really liked. But, like, when One Piece is over, I'm going to have to go back through the entire story and rate each chapter 1 to 10. Because then I'll officially be able to find what the worst chapter of One Piece is and what the best chapter of One Piece is. And I can adjust my scale accordingly. Because I feel like at the moment, it's like
be your own IMDb, bro.
Yeah, dude. Because at the moment, it's like each chapter is such a good chapter, especially when you compare how much content you get compared to other series. So it's hard not to make it seem like each chapter is like an 8, 9 out of 10. But at the same point in time,
that's gonna be a 100-hour video.
Oh, it'll just be me live streaming for 3 days straight, just like straight up injecting coffee, because why not? That being said, we see the fleet here, and we see the fleet here, and we find out that there's over 100 ships, right?
Pretty insane.
So this is more than twice the size of Whitebeard's fleet at Marineford.
Oh yeah,
because Whitebeard
Whitebeard
had 43 ships. Yep. And I think it got to 46 if you include the 3 Moby Dicks.
under the water when they bounced. Yeah, when they bounced onto the marine plateau.
Yeah. But I would also like to point out of those 46 ships, only one, which was Little Oars Jr.'s ship, seems to be the size of these giant battleships, the 20 massive battleships that are here. Because if you look at these ships, right, the smallest scale ship that we see here is a marine battleship, which is already more than twice the size of the Sunny.
Yeah.
And you compare that to some of the bigger battleships here, some of the biggest battleships are like 5 times that. So these, like, some of these ships are probably like almost a kilometer in size.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like like those 20 colossal battleships are kind of like 20 big mum chanters. You know what I mean? And it's like
Right.
having that pull up on you is wild, especially since like I feel like it's pretty evident that Saturn's in one of them, right? Like I feel like we can
Yeah,
all
yeah.
confidently feel that.
There's no way he wouldn't. Be like, why would you take some like a great warship and not put Saturn in it? He's not gonna be in like the little platoon boat like swimming alongside it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Hey man, it could be a deception. You never know.
Just
If he doesn't
strategy.
want to get found, putting him on the smallest ship and most insignificant would be the play.
What I will
I
say
mean,
though,
it's
that
smart.
is sort of anti-hype is it's a third the size of the fleet that the Marines had at Marineford because it's 30,000 sailors, but they're not stated to be elite Marines. They're just 30,000 sailors, which implies they
Right.
are a bit weaker than the Marineford Marines as well, and the Marines that were present at like the Buster Call in his lobby. So I think overall, this fleet is the most impressive fleet we've seen in the entire story, but there are specific caveats at the moment that
Yeah, I
imply
feel
the
like ship
masses are
wise,
weaker.
battleship wise, it's definitely the biggest. Like firepower wise, definitely, but compared to like numbers, definitely not.
Yeah. Um.
Well, to be honest, it kind of makes sense though that the Marines are spearheading a lot more into their, I guess, not so much soldier influence, but it's more so about their assets they have instead. Because Akainu's been spearheading a whole lot of advancement in terms of getting the Marines into the New World. Because again, until Akainu took over as the the fleet admiral, the Marines were basically almost non-existent in the New World.
Mm,
So the fact that instead of, I guess, I kind of was more so going for not quote unquote technology, but more so means of means of combat. What I mean by that is like getting actual like strategic positions, actually getting ships that are not only on par with those of the pirates in the New World, but are way higher up. Because again, they've had Vegapunk for ages and ages now. So the fact that Akainu's finally been pulling over all these new regimes and just having, I mean, I can't even imagine the economic state of the Marines right
mm.
now, but the money's got to be coming from somewhere.
And I've always got to point out is like a little bit of an underrated thing, but all marine ships, right? Their hulls are as strong as diamond because they have sea stone across the entire bottom of their ships to stop
Oh
sea
Hmm.
yeah.
kings. So, like, their ship durability, they may not be made out of like atom wood, which is like what the
But it's
Sunny's
still
made out
like
of.
crazy as hell.
Yeah, but these ships still would be arguably stronger, at least in just like their physicality, than a lot of the other Yonko ships that are their generic ships. Like the big Mama Tarts, like Tart 28 probably isn't as strong as one of these. You know what I mean?
Is it a
Um,
bad thing if I imagine something else when you said the big mama tarts?
hey man, Big Mum love here. We all love Big Mum, right?
Too bad she doesn't love her kids.
Well, I mean, I'm just glad I'm not one of her kids. Because if she raises a
There
hand
goes
to
to
me,
me.
I can
I'm
take her to
glad I'm
court.
not one of her husbands.
I don't know. It depends on what
True.
age. Big Mom
Yeah,
back in
that
the day,
depends.
I've seen people make bigger mistakes for no reason.
Hashtag Big Mom actually knocked up Kaido. Theory confirmed.
Put it this way, right? Not only is she a bit of a baddie in her youth, but there's like a 1 in 50 chance that you produce a Katakuri. And it's not your DNA, but you're along for like credit. So I mean, yeah, you may be Flampei's father, in which case I don't see your time on this earth lasting much longer. But I mean, the alternative is also pretty cool.
I mean, I'd be down to have Oven for a son.
I'm not gonna lie. I stand the theory is dead and gone, right? But I stand the fact that those triplets, Oven, Daifuku, and Katakuri, if you actually marry them up with Kaido, each one of those kids has a feature of Kaido's facially.
Yeah,
And I
that's a
hate
good point.
I hate that is just a coincidence and that Kaido isn't their like deadbeat dad. Because it's the same with Streusen. We don't talk about how Streusen is probably Perispero's dad. Right? Both of them with their big tongue out and all that good stuff. We don't talk about the age
Right.
gap. Pirates be pirating. I mean,
if we're going by the quote-unquote true definition of what pirates did back in the day, oh no.
I mean, Oda's already confirmed that she's done that. And we don't
Yep.
need to address it, but we know what we're talking about. What I will say, though, is we know that Katakuri was born while Big Mom was on the Rocks crew, right? So,
Yeah,
Right. Oh, good point.
like, people like Katakuri were probably at God Valley.
Possibly.
And, like, they
but
would...
we also have to remind ourselves, like, Big Mom probably, like, the Rocks pirates probably dissipated by the time that Katakuri was able to remember everything, right? Because
Ooh,
the first
Yeah,
scene that we
I'm sure
see
Big
him is
Mom
that
wouldn't.
they're inside of town.
I would actually say no, because Big Mom was still part of the Rocks crew when Brulé got scarred. Timeline-wise.
Oh, is that a fact? Oh,
Yeah.
I actually wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, because Katakuri's 48. Katakuri's 48, right? And Rocks obviously ended 40 years ago, right?
Oh yeah, so he was 8 years old. Okay, so he was able to remember everything.
I don't think he would have fought during.
No,
Well,
definitely not.
It's not about fighting. It's more about Big Mum's baby dadders could be some of the Rocks pirates. Like Wang Ji, maybe I don't know, maybe Opera and the Octoplets puppy. Who knows? I feel like that's a random tangent though. Right. So we also get introduced to 9 vice admirals, or reintroduced to 2, and freshly introduced to potentially 7 more.
Okay, can we really? Okay, real talk, low key. That one down in the bottom right, second next to the guy with the crazy mohawk. Can we really call that a vice admiral? I don't even know what that is.
First things first, that bottom right dude, that is not a mohawk. That is his sword.
Oh,
Wait, what?
He's got a crescent.
Yeah,
So he's got a staff with a crescent blade on it. If you look at that,
Oh,
which is like sitting on his shoulder.
Totally should have been his hair.
Well, we saw him, and I've actually got it up on another panel here. We actually saw him a couple chapters ago. Where is it? It's 1078, page 11. We see him front on, and he doesn't have the mohawk, but he does have a damn cool design, and I love his design. Right?
Yeah.
But Chinzilla, I am calling it right now. He has one of 4 fruits. All options are a zone. Right? He's either
fish.
he's human fruit model fishman. Right? A
Okay.
caterpillar fruit. Right? Now,
Okay.
we actually already have a caterpillar fruit that existed on the Whitebeard Pirates crew. I would say he may be like the new user of it if that pirate passed away. Right?
Or of course a different model.
Potentially a different model.
There are millions of butterflies.
It'd be also really interesting to have the worm fruit, and he's an earthworm.
That would be pretty. Because we've only seen his head, right?
Yeah,
We haven't seen his body, so maybe he is just like a full earthworm guy.
and it'd be really funny seeing him being able to like dive into the ground, so sort of like Senior Pink.
Right?
You know what would actually be really
that's
cool?
a better version of Senior Pink's Devil Fruit.
The zone version
No,
of it.
you know what would actually be really cool as instead of what we assume to be a mouth, like right underneath the nose, that's actually just like another layer. So he is actually legit a worm because worms don't have mouths.
I mean,
What
potentially.
if every single layer is just a mouth?
Um, the fourth option I think would be the slug fruit.
Yep.
So
I like that one actually. Yeah.
So it's either fishmen look weird. All right, we're not gonna lie. You could have any model of fishman. Like he could be a stonefish fishman and look like that. You know what I mean? So, and I've always wanted there to be a fishman fruit because like half of the ability would be you can't swim. You know what I mean? It seems like one of those fruits that would be like so funny to have because like the main thing you can't use. But I'm 100% leaning on it being a zone, and it's it's either a caterpillar, slug, or a worm, right? Just based on the design.
What if it's like a fishman fruit? You can breathe underwater, similar to like Jack.
But you can't swim.
Yeah, but you can't move, but you can still breathe.
Yeah.
Which is also why I think like Kaido, like people are like, well, if he's jumping off of Sky Island anyways, why doesn't he just jump in the
Fish
water?
fruit.
Yeah, it's fish model dragon, so
He would just get fished out.
Yeah, he'll just be at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
So this guy is legit a worm because he gets put on a bait and then dangled into the ocean.
I think it would also be really interesting based on the matchups as well, right? Because I think there's two options, right? First things first, is it going to be Luffy versus Saturn, Zoro versus Kizaru? Or is it going to be Luffy versus Kizaru, no one fights Saturn at first, and the Straw Hats and company fight the Vice Admirals?
Yeah, I don't think... Well, we might see, like, at the tail end, like, when the Straw Hats are, like, trying to get away or something. Because I don't think we're going to get, like, a full-on, like... Of course, we're going to get a full battle, because of how it's been advertised. But I don't think it's going to be, like, a full-on showing of everybody's power. But we might see, like, a sneak peek of, like, the Gorosei's power at the very tail end.
So, I agree. I think this is going to like... Just first and foremost, just to put all my cards on the table here, I think what's going to happen is the Straw Hats are going to come out looking good. Then this fleet is going to actually pull out all the stops and actually look like they're going to win. And then the upset's going to be the Straw Hats win, and that's the Egghead Island incident. Like this entire fleet got defeated by the Straw Hats is what gets reported. What causes that though? This chapter sets up. And this is the theory. You've probably already heard this on TikTok, Young, but Kuma hasn't had the chance yet. So this chapter opens up with the events of the Lucia Kingdom, the earthquake around the world, and the tsunami, right? I never got the chance to say it, but the thing that accompanies Water 7 the most, and Enies Lobby the most, is Aqua Laguna, the once a year tidal wave. Right?
Oh.
This, the Lucia Kingdom event, may have triggered a new tidal wave that happens once a year. And this is starting to form for the first time now. This event here, I think, actually perfectly mirrors the Battle of Ed War. Right?
Ah, yeah, because Roger was saved by a storm.
Yes. Now... The Battle of Ed War was Shiki had a fleet of 50 ships, right? Versus Roger's one ship, and it was just shy of Roger being declared the king of the pirates. Shiki was there to specifically get an ancient weapon off Roger, and the only thing that allowed the Roger Pirates to win was a freak storm. Right? I actually think that's going to be what happens here. So instead of wanting the ancient weapon, they want the new ancient weapon, which is produced by Vegapunk. So that Saturn and Kizaru want Vegapunk, right? The Straw Hats are going to come out looking really good and fighting. We're going to see all these Vice Admirals and like this entire fleet end up actually getting the upper hand in combat. Very similar to the Vinsmokes versus the Big Mum Pirates, where one week one group looked better, the next week the other group looked better, and it kept flipping back and forth. And I think it's going to end off with the Marines looking like they're probably going to win, and the tsunami coming and wiping the fleet, with the Straw Hats being able to coop to burst away.
Yeah, I could see that. It would be a nice
Yeah, I like that.
tie-in with recent events.
And both are, and like, just to summarize again, the Battle of Ed War was the Roger Pirates versus 50 ships. Luffy, the second Pirate King, had the exact same feat, but instead of 50 ships, he doubled it because he's the second Pirate King, and it's 100 ships. Right?
That's actually, I like that parallel right there.
Instead of Ed War, it's the Battle of Egg War, because it's at Egghead.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, it's pretty smart. That's pretty smart, bro.
I may be putting too many eggs into one basket here. I also like to point out,
you did there.
I don't think the likes of like Kizaru's going down permanently this arc, but I think this is, I think this is an exhibition match for these characters here. And the reason why these Vice Admirals are here is some of them may get wiped out, some of them may not, based on what ends up happening. I think what's probably going to happen is when the tsunami comes, it's going to happen where Luffy's fighting Kizaru, Zoro maybe tries to intercept, causing Saturn to get involved. Saturn's going to step up to start going against Luffy. The tsunami's going to come. The Straw Hats are all going to escape except for Luffy and Zoro, and it's going to be the two of them fleeing at the end while Saturn and Kizaru have to maintain the fleet.
I kind of think we might get a Kizaru storyline this arc.
I would love a Kizaru storyline.
I think, I don't know, we've been shown ever since post time skip that Luffy can just handle himself when it comes to admirals. Granted, he hasn't really had any fair fights with admirals. Like Fujitora and him weren't like really fighting because he was like calling out his attacks before he threw them, stuff like that. And of course, we know he can dodge Kizaru's light. So I feel like Luffy definitely would be able to fight an admiral. I also maybe even like the Doflamingo thing, how he was just able to break out of Kizaru's or not Kizaru, Kuzan's ice. That kind of shows that he's almost relative to the admirals almost. And then of course after Luffy fought Dofi, then we see him fight an admiral. And like of course again it wasn't like an even fight, but I think it was kind of showing us that like, yeah, maybe like he is almost on par with admirals now that he fought a Yonko. I think especially since Green Bull was afraid to go to Wano because of Kaido, and Luffy beat Kaido.
So the thing about that is, right,
yeah,
I think admirals and Yonko are pretty much dead equal for the most part, right? Like, I know people put one over the other. I think the point is, like, some admirals beat some Yonko beat some admirals. Like, that is, like, a pretty even baseline, right? The difference being, you know, the Pirate King goes above the admirals and starts messing with the people like the fleet admirals and Im and the, you know, commissioner of the fleet, like Fleet Admiral Kong and stuff like that. That's the same sort of equivalent levels going beyond that, right? With the admirals though, Kizaru versus Luffy here. The reason why that's really interesting is because Kizaru, out of all the admirals, has the most unique fruit. In we haven't actually seen him have the ability to telekinetically control his element so far, which is something that all Logies can do. But Kizaru, because we haven't seen him be able to do it. So, and what I mean by that is like, Kizaru's a light man, right? So he's light. If every other Logia can telekinetically control their element, if Kizaru can do that, could he not stop people being able to see by turning off light? Stopping light actually reaching people?
Oh, yo, that would be a cracked power, bro.
But it's also heavily negated by advanced observation haki.
Right.
So it's only good against people that aren't specifically kitted out like Luffy.
It's almost like a solar flare from Dragon Ball.
Yeah. But it's sort of like the opposite. So it's like so we've seen him blind people, but we've never seen him stop the light reaching you. For example, in Monet, right? Monet fighting Tashigi. Monet was sitting there flipping her fingers around, closing doors on the other side of the room because Logies can telekinetically control their fire. When Ace does his like fiery ragdoll technique, he shoots the fire out and then telekinetically changes its state at different at distance. You know what I mean?
Right.
We know it's a thing that Logies can all do. The problem is we've never seen top tier Logies do it. But Kizaru is also the one Logia where his element is more unique than any other Logia element in the sense that he produces light like lasers. The only time we've ever seen him make his light retain a shape is when he makes his sword, right?
Right.
But it's always in relation to any construct he makes, he has to be holding. We've never seen him do it at range.
So you're almost like a Caesar situation, but instead of taking the oxygen out of the air around the whoever you're fighting, taking the light from like their eyes.
Yeah.
Or stopping the light from reaching their eyes.
Yeah. Another crazy possibility as well, and I've been sitting on this for a minute, right, is we don't know what Logia Awakenings are, right?
Right.
Zone Awakenings, we know they get a striking new transformation and a bunch of physical buffs. Awakened zones also get added effects. Paramecias can control their environment around them, right? Logias are stated to be the best type of devil fruit, full stop, even if they're not the rarest, because mythical zones are rarer. Right?
Yeah.
We've seen Logias attain weird forms. For example, NL, his
NL.
his final form. We also have Caesar Clown. He makes a very similar form when he's just before Luffy beats him, where he makes like a bigger buffed up form very similar to NL, but the difference being there, right? We also know that Caesar knows what's in, say, a Rumble Ball, which a Rumble Ball forcibly awakens Chopper. Caesar improved the Rumble Ball because he already had that technology for himself. So we know he's already dabbled in trying to manipulate devil fruits to awaken. Right?
Right.
But it may not be a proper awakening. But we've got examples of potential form changes for Logias. We've got theories, and all this is just complete speculation, but we've got theories about awakenings. For example, Punk Hazard being from awakened Aokiji and Akainu, right? Them being able to just turn the environment into their element to fight. Right?
Right.
I would raise a possibility is a Logia's awakening is a Paramecia end zone awakening for the Logia. Right? But the craziest part would be there, part of the awakening would also include any mythical variations of their element. Right?
Ooh.
So,
yeah.
say Ace awakens the Merumeru no Mi, or Sabo awakens the Merumeru no Mi, all of a sudden he has flame clouds now as well. Right?
That that actually be pretty sick.
For Kizaru though,
Like flame clouds instead of like a zone clouds or steam
yeah.
clouds.
So it's like the weird thing is, like, you got to think about it, like, what Logias have we seen, right? So okay, Smoker, what's a mythical version of smoke? Well, we haven't seen one per se, but you could argue the Neo Clouds that float around all awakened Devil Fruit users. You know what I mean? There's like potential stuff like that. NL, we saw him get the Neo Clouds and have a form change, but NL's also like, NL's a really odd case because we talk about him like he's lightning, but what is his Devil Fruit? Is he lightning? Is he plasma? Because all lightning is plasma, right? Or is he electricity? Because he also like can read electrical signals and electricity. You know what I mean? So it's like all these Logias stack up into multiple forms. With Kizaru, for example, we already have two examples of mythical light in One Piece. Foxy's slow beams and Boa's Mero beams.
Yo, I think 100% that Kizaru, if he's like when he's awakened, he would be able to shoot slow beams, because that's a form of light, and he literally has the light fruit.
Yeah. So
And it literally says it's a photon that was discovered by science. So if it's like a photon that science discovered, that means it's something that would be in his arsenal.
see, think of that. A photon that scientists discovered. Literally, chapter 1089, page 9, we have Vegapunk studying Kizaru's light and light abilities and photons. If he was going to discover a new kind of light, it would be studying the Light Man.
Yo,
Right?
that theory is actually cracked, bro.
But think about it in terms of, because we've got other characters in One Piece that are stated to be faster than light. So it's like, what if the awakening form of Kizaru's Light Fruit is he can rob people of their speed while maintaining his?
Ooh, yo, that would be pretty insane. Especially since he's light speed, so being able to rob people of their speed and then still being able to maintain light speed, that would be a crazy ability.
The only way around it would be to have the specific type of haki that we know Yonkos have, where you can't have your personage affected.
Right.
So
like we've seen Law use.
Exactly. Which is an extremely high tier technique. You know what I mean? Making matters even worse, right? Even if Kizaru can't stop the light reaching your eyes, you know how he shoots his lasers? Like his sacred jewel attack? Why? Like, again, a Logia can create, transform into, and telekinetically control their element. What's to stop him shooting a bunch of them out and then stopping them mid-air and being able to let them start firing off whenever he wants? Sort of like Piccolo's Hellzone grenade. Yeah.
Yo, I like that. That would be, yo. That would actually, like, if he does that next chapter or something, I'd be hyped.
And
I would be so hyped.
The reason why this works so well is because Luffy currently doesn't actually know the Devil Fruit. The Haki technique to stop people changing his personage, like Law. Only Law has been shown the ability of that technique post Wano. Right? But at the same point in time, post Wano, even though Law's learnt new Haki like that, he hasn't learnt stuff like Rio, even though he saw Luffy using it.
That's a good point, because Luffy wouldn't put... Because, like you were saying, the only reason Law even noticed that is because his Devil Fruit ability was being directly affected by Big Mom. Yeah, by the Haki. So, Kid was still able to magnetize things, and, he was even able to magnetize Big Mom, and Luffy was able to just punch everybody with his rubber fist still. So the only person it really affected was Law. So yeah, that makes sense that he was he would be the only one that would actually notice that, hey, yeah, like hockey negates devil fruits.
But we also know Luffy is really smart. Monkey see, monkey do. So I could imagine Gear 5 Luffy, right? Monkey D Luffy, Gear 5 versus Kizaru, the yellow monkey, right? And it's a battle.
Right.
It's a battle of quote unquote bright ideas, right?
Yo, that would be hilarious, yo.
So you've got Luffy using
I want to
Gear
see
5.
like super slow mo Luffy, bro.
See, and that's the thing. He could be stuck in super slow mo, but we saw
In,
saw
like, Gear 5.
Kaido do the demolition gusts and actually cut through Luffy in Gear 5. But even
Right.
though he cut clean through him, it didn't sever his body.
Ooh, good point.
So Luffy could be getting
didn't notice
shot with lasers, and they hurt him, but they're not doing as
And then
much
he'll
damage.
just like reform like Play-Doh almost.
Yeah. See, that's the scary thing about Gear 5 at the moment. A lot of people really overlook that slashes thing. People read it and go, oh, so he's still immune to slashing attacks. They don't realize Luffy got clean cut through, and it
Yeah, and
didn't
then-
cut him.
Yeah, like he was. It wasn't even like a focus at the end. He just had like a few bandages on,
Like,
and like he was cool.
we saw the slashes go through his arms and legs completely. They went through him, but they never cut him. It's weird, right? And it like I said,
Right.
it can play into this right here, where it's like, so obviously we're talking about Luffy versus Kizaru here. I think what's going to happen is they're going to have a very flashy aerial battle over the fleet, right? We know Kizaru can turn his mass on and off, hence why he's able to ride cannonballs without affecting them, right? So
Right.
Kizaru's able to just float in the air and fly, shooting laser beams at Luffy. Luffy's probably going to be going around, probably getting burnt by some of them, then catching them and throwing them back at him. So they're going to be going back and forth, mucking around with each other. Luffy's going to pull out some goofy shit, try some new shit. Kizaru's probably going to get pushed to the point where he may need to use an awakening, and we'll probably get to
Yo.
see what an awakening is. Whether that's affecting the area around him, whether that's getting a new form that's very similar to Luffy, or whether that's getting mythical variations of light, like the slow beam. Because then you could get really funny stuff where, like, you know how Luffy ran on air against Kaido?
Right.
Slow beam while Luffy's running on air and he's just running in place. And then Kizaru flies and
Ooh.
kicks him, sends his head flying, and then the slow beam wears off and his head like just redacts back and he springs back. Very Looney Tunes.
Yo, what if Kizaru tries to pull that on Luffy and he just activates Gear 5 and it just like doesn't work? Like he just Toon Forces his way out of it.
Very possible. Very possible. But separate to Luffy versus Kizaru, we got these Nine Vice Admirals, and I actually think we have a good matchup here. But I will say, personally speaking, I don't think Usopp's gonna fight anyone in this arc.
No, I feel like Elbaf is still coming up,
Yeah,
and that is definitely going to be Usopp's arc.
I think
That's when
Usopp.
he's going to become like the brave warrior of the sea, Usopp.
I think Usopp, when we start getting fighting, is gonna be like standing in front of Vegapunk, pretending to give orders, as if he is Vegapunk.
Right.
And he's going to be sniping just the fodder marines, but the world government are going to see him giving orders to like the seraphim or the sea beasts and stuff like
Oh,
that.
that would be great. And they just increase it. Imagine he just gets the highest bounty on the crew.
I would say
They're like, oh, he's Captain Usopp. He's the leader. He's leading everything.
Usopp's next bounty is probably going to be 1.5 bill.
Ooh.
Because he gets the same bounties as Luffy, minus his 200k bounty. So it's either going to be not following that scheme, in which case it'll just be some random arbitrary number like when he got the 200 mil, or he's going to get Luffy's bounty and follow in the same footsteps as Luffy for a little bit more. You know what I mean? And I mean,
Right.
being able to control the Seraphim, like from the world government's perspective, them thinking he can control the Seraphim, they're going to be like, that's terrifying. The other thing is the rest of this lineup. I think they have very specific matchups. The only people that are potential outliers are Jewelry Bonnie, Kaku, Stussy, and Lucci.
I don't think we're gonna be seeing much fighting from Jewelry Bonnie. Maybe just a few fodder marines to get like more of a feel on how her powers work and what they're supposed to do, and like the limits or whatever. But I feel like the main story with Bonnie isn't gonna be a fight. It's gonna be maybe her recalling what happened in the chamber with Kuma.
So I would love to see that flashback because I feel like it's integral to the story, especially since we don't know what Kuma's doing at the moment. The last time we saw him, he was climbing Marijua. So there's still
Right.
something happening with that narrative point, right?
I think that's what Oda's saving it for. Is he's gonna go back to the flashback, and then while he's doing the flashback, he's also gonna show again what's going on with Kuma, just like how he's been doing in the past with Bonnie. Every time he shows Bonnie, he also shows Kuma. Whenever she's talking about Kuma, he's showing what Kuma's doing in that moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm gonna take a random stab here. This is gonna sound so arbitrary. Those 9 vice admirals there, I think Bonnie's gonna fight the middle bottom row, the middle of the bottom row, the dude with the glasses and the lips. The reason for that is I actually think this is an upgraded design for former Rear Admiral Kadar. Former Rear Admiral Kadar was only ever shown in the Fisher Tiger flashback as someone that had prejudice to the fishermen, right?
Oh,
Bonnie being Kuma's son, or sorry, Kuma's daughter, but Kuma being a member of another race, it would be interesting to see her fight someone that's a little bit prejudiced.
yeah, definitely.
It also is important to note that Kadar was a swordsman, and Bonnie isn't a swordsman, but we see her fight with a pole. So we could have sort of like a swordsman versus like Bonnie who fights with a pole, very similar to Sabo, right?
Yo, what if she just picks up the failed lightsaber thing and like fights with that and like with the bugs that chase it?
That'd be funny.
Yo, what if she like ages up the bugs and they like turn big or something like future distortion?
Okay,
That would be cracked.
two things because you brought that up and that's a brilliant idea. Chinzilla, also potentially a frog zone. Bonnie comes in with the lightsaber, all these flies come in, he eats the flies,
Yo, that's crazy.
right?
I feel like that's something Oda would definitely do.
The other thing is, Bonnie could temporarily age up any of the Straw Hats here into like their 40s, in their prime.
I want to see Prime Luffy going at it so bad.
Because imagine seeing a prime monster trio here.
Yo,
Because it's not something we may ever see in the story, realistically.
but
Because,
it might be something Oda might want to add.
yeah, just as a temporary, like, this is what it would look like in 20 years' time to see the Straw Hats still fighting. And this would be the perfect time to try and pull that off.
Yeah, I definitely want to see that.
So, these Vice Admirals, starting at the top left, the dude that looks like Hulk Hogan, right? I think Hulk Hogan is going to fight Sanji. And I think specifically, this Hulk Hogan guy's abilities are going to be electricity based. Very similar to Magai from the Whitebeard Pirates. Next to him is Doberman, who we know is a swordsman. I think Doberman's going to fight Zoro. It's also very important to know he's one of the most important Vice Admirals because he's been one of the most displayed vice admirals throughout all of One Piece. He
Like
was
Doberman might. Well, he might fight Zoro, but It depends. Yeah, it really depends on if Saturn's coming out.
Yeah.
So, I don't really think Saturn will be coming out. So yeah,
so I see.
definitely either Zoro or Brook.
So on that top row, I see it going. Sanji's fight is the dude on the left. Zoro fights Doberman. Robin fights
Right.
Dole. And the guy that looks like Charlotte Opera fights Jinbei, because Jinbei always fights the dude that looks like Charlotte Opera.
Right.
Jinbei has had 3 fights in the story with fat bearded dudes. Like from Moritsume to Opera, right? Like if you're a chunky dude with a beard, Jinbei's coming for you, right? There can be only
Right.
one. He's the Highlander of chunky dudes. Down on the bottom row though, I think this is actually where it's going to be really interesting. So the bottom left, I actually genuinely, unironically don't know if that's supposed to be a man or a woman. I think
I thought it was a version of like Squard and Horace Jr. mixed and combined into one.
I think that character is fighting Brook.
Yeah.
The old crazy looking lady, I think, is fighting Nami. Kada,
Oh, okay.
Kada, I think, is fighting Jewelry Bonnie if Jewelry Bonnie and Stussy don't specifically fight Kaku Stussy. Because, Kaku Lucci. Because if Kaku and Lucci, once fighting starts, turn on us again, someone's got to deal with them. So that could change these matchups significantly. Right? Chinzilla, I think, is going to be fighting Chopper. I think it'd be interesting if he's a zone. Like I said, Chopper the zone versus another zone, but they're out at sea. Chopper is an animal that's become human. You got a human that's become more animal-like, and it would also be really funny to see, like, if he's like an earthworm or a slug or something, Chopper being grossed out by it. And the dude with the sickest set of shades, other than Kizaru, is 100% fighting Frankie. Like, that is the dude down the bottom right. I am so confident that he's fighting Frankie. Just the entire demeanor about him screams Frankie.
I really want him to be into like death metal, and then he and Frankie just actually end up getting along instead of being enemies.
Well,
Like Frankie versus Senor Pink style.
100%.
we actually, like, this is gonna be really weird. Frankie's a good swordsman, apparently.
He's decent enough, yeah.
Like, I don't think people understand how little people in One Piece can actually do flying slashes, and Frankie is one of those people. Frankie has better sword feats, canonically at the moment, than Killer.
And Tashigi, bro.
Yeah. Like, genuinely think about that, right? Frankie has better sword feats than
Wait, then Killer? Are you
Killer.
sure?
Yeah, Killer's never done a projectile sword slash.
That's crazy, bro.
So
You're right, though.
Well, I mean-
He's only done that, like...
he's done.
AoE
That Sonic
attack.
Scythe move would technically count as a...
So I'm drawing in. This is gonna sound random. I did a TikTok video on this recently because, like I said, I've been going through doing a bunch of research in that. Right, there is a difference between characters being so strong that when they swing their weapon, things cut, versus a specific flying slash technique. One is sword skill, one is brute strength. And I can give the best example that's the most clear cut. When Mihawk cut the tsunami, he didn't mean to do that. That's just brute strength. Right? But when Mihawk slashed at Whitebeard, you see the energy beam come off. That's the difference. Right? So Zoro, when he learns to do flying slashes, there's that energy beam that comes off. And there's only... I can run off the list of people. The only people that we see actually ever do flying slashes, so the first person to ever do it is Zoro in Sky Island. The next person to do it is T-Bone on the sea train. Kaku can do it, but we've never seen him do it with a sword. It's only with the Rokoshiki techniques.
With his Rokushiki.
Right? And I
He did
specifically...
it with his four sword style
So
when he was fighting Zoro.
So he never did it with a sword, though. I went back in the manga to check this, right? He does the Rokushiki kicks to send out those projectile slashes, and he calls himself a four-sword style user because while he's doing those kicks, he's holding two swords, but he never does it with the swords.
Yo, that's crazy.
Right? Then you skip all the way, and I mean all the way, to Dressrosa. And the next person to do it is I'm forgetting his name. I'm thinking Dalmatian, but that's the Marine. Diamante. Diamante is the next person to do a projectile sword slash in the story. So pre-time skip. There's Zoro, T-Bone, arguably Kaku, but Mihawk at Marineford with the projectile sword slash, and then it skips all the way until you get to Diamante.
Dang.
Right? There's not a lot of swordsmen pre-Wano that can do it. Right? Because then
that's fair.
Because then you skip all of Wano. You skip all of Wano because we never see Cracker do it, but we see Cracker do thrusts, right? And it's important to note, like, we see, so, I don't know if you guys remember, but in Thriller Bark, right, Zoro versus Ryuma, a good example of this as well is Ryuma tries to do the thrust, and it, like, deletes the wall behind Zoro, right? But then you specifically have Brook comment going, that's not my sword technique. He's just so much physically stronger, it's destroying stuff like I could never.
Yeah.
So...
It's more so a feat of strength instead of having the innate skill.
Right. So, skipping that, we get all the way to Wano, right? Where only half, like not even half the scabbards are shown to be able to do projectile sword slashes. Right?
Yeah, I think just like Kawamatsu.
So, Kawamatsu, but Kawamatsu's also arguable because Kawamatsu, when he does it, it could be Fishman Karate with his sword. Since there's always water present. Right? So it may not be technically the flying sword slash. It may be he's manipulating water while slashing with a sword. Right? Kiyoshiro can do it. We see him do it when he cuts the ship down when they're first going to the raid. Right? Okiku can do it because she does the scythe slashes at Kaido. Izo does the slicing rounds, but those are bullets, not sword slashes, so they don't technically count. Right? And then Frankie does it. Who's Who does it. But because he pulls out that little pocket knife that had the big scabbard that made it look like he was going to have a big sword. He does it then when he does the flying pistol slashes. Right? But apart from that, that's pretty much all the people that have ever done flying slashes in the story. Everyone else, it's just, they're so strong that, like, the cut happens past them. And again, the first time that ever happens, a lot of people forget this, Axe Hand Morgan swings at Luffy, misses him, and cuts a building down. Like cuts a fence line down into a building. But,
yeah, I remember that.
But it's not a flying slash. That's just brute strength. So it's genuinely wild to think about how little actual swordsmen and skilled swordsmen we've had in the story of One Piece. For a show that has like a predominant heavy swordsman category in it. You know what I mean? I feel like that was just like such a really random rant, but it's like thinking about that, it's just like it blows my mind how little people have been like good at swordsmanship like that. And that's why someone like Doberman, who's always been shown to be a swordsman, it would be really good to see some swordsman love out of the Marines, considering the Marines all train in swordsmanship.
Yeah.
Yo, Johnny Farman's love child. Haven't seen you in a minute. Good to see you, my dude. Tough day in the office for Luffy, 100%. So, right. going back to it, these matchups against the Vice Admirals, do you guys have any difference in perspective of who you think's going to fight who?
Well, more traditionally, I mean, usually One Piece usually pits the girls 1v1, so I'd imagine Doll going up against Nami Robin or even Jewelry Bonnie. Again, yeah, probably for like the guy on the left, the Hulk Hogan guy, Sanji usually gets pitted against guys who tend to be brawlers. So I'd imagine that Sanji would go up against Mr. like Extreme Stash and Ultimate Chin right there.
The manly blondes fighting against each other makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Especially yeah, again, Sanji usually gets pitted against brawlers in the sense of like
Slower,
guys who are
beefy
just, like,
dudes.
super, like, yeah, solid beefy dudes. I'd imagine Chopper fighting the actual chestnut haired looking lady.
Ooh, really? I like that. That's a good
Mhm.
mix up.
Could you imagine? Because Chopper goes into Super Grandpa mode.
Ooh. You think Chopper's
Well,
gonna
what if
have
he
to go
turns into-
into 4 Rumble Balls or 3 Rumble Balls for that?
I don't know. It depends. It really depends because again, yeah, you said that there was still Lucci and Kaku, right?
Mm.
So some of the Straw Hats might end up having to take on more than they usually do, which is a good excuse for Chopper having to require the 3 Rumble Bolt dosage.
Okay.
Honest to God, I like who's that guy in the middle, bottom middle?
So it's not confirmed, but I think that's former Rear Admiral Kadar. And I'll bring up Rear
Yeah,
Admiral
the guy
Kadar.
who yeah, no, the guy who got his butt kicked by Fisher Tiger, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The design is slightly different, but
Yeah,
again,
especially with the lipstick and the pointed glasses, right?
yeah, but like 20 years makes sense, and also it's important to note, Rear Admiral Kadar worked directly under Kizaru.
Yep. Yeah, that's fair. Plus, he's also got the same suit design. His old one also had stripes, I think, in the manga.
Yeah.
I could actually imagine the worm-looking guy going up against Frankie.
That
Frankie usually tends to get the more unorthodox guys in
The
the sense of
weirdos.
Senior Pink, Sasaki, right? Guys who are like quote unquote hard boiled, but also bring a lot more to the table in a sense of again they're brawlers, but they're a lot more diverse in how they fight.
he gets the lovable weirdos, for sure.
Yep, definitely.
For those of you that don't know, sorry, I'm just bringing up the image now. You guys can keep talking. This was Rear Admiral Kadar.
Yeah, no, I do remember him. Yeah. This Mohawk guy, though, I don't know because his weapon is a little odd.
Yeah, I love the uniqueness of the weapon. So it's like it's not like a
It's like a reverse axe, but also kind of like in that hoop, like
horseshoe.
It looks very good for slap. No, like it looks like a double-handed axe in a sense.
Oh, I don't know why I'm thinking of this right now, but random out there theory on the fly, he's gonna have a horse zone.
Centaur?
Yeah. Return of Centaur Frankie, because that weapon kind of looks like a horseshoe.
Ooh.
And he does look pretty hard-boiled, not gonna lie.
Like, could you imagine like the return of Centaur Frankie?
Centaur Frankie versus an actual centaur? That would be cool.
It'd be kind of funny, right?
I want to see how good
extremely
the
manly.
Centaur Frankie looks in like Battle Frankie. What is it, 47?
Yeah. I think the funniest thing
doubles down in the gladiatorial style.
The best part about a post time skip Centaur Frankie is he goes into the Centaur mode, right? And then he presses his nose and he gets the long hair.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
So he gets
Like
the
a
horse
mane.
mane. Yeah. I'm now selling myself on that as an idea. Also, I need to point out, right? This conflict's happening here, and I had the chapter prep before. But chapter 1079, the Blackbeard pirates showed up to Egghead a day ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we still have no comprehension of them being present here. So, we know that because of Augur, people can teleport, right? If we can't see the ship at the moment, I think maybe Shiryu's been teleported here, and I think it'll be Augur, Katarina Devon, and Shiryu, and the ship might be invisible and docked at the side at the moment. I know that might just be a random thing to have brought up, but it's also a possibility that some of these matchups are going to be interrupted by Blackbeard pirates.
Yeah, I think definitely, and I think they might. I definitely not gonna put all my eggs into one basket for this theory, but like, they might go ahead and try to capture Robin, because of course Robin is missing in that double spread that showed all the Straw Hats. The only one that's missing is Robin, so maybe he might kidnap Robin. Um, but yeah, I'm not necessarily gonna bet on that.
I think it would make
But
a lot of
before you say that, real quick, I probably gotta go
Yep.
right now, so
All right. No.
I'm gonna go ahead and have a good night, y'all.
Cheers for coming through. Much appreciated, my dude. Have a good night.
Nice meeting
Yeah,
you,
man,
Queen.
and nice meeting you, Kuma.
You as well.
Alrighty. So, the thing that I think may happen, right? Like he was saying, we don't see Robin at the end of this chapter.
Yeah.
I could really see the Blackbeard pirates having already kidnapped Robin, and maybe Katarina Devon takes her place in the crew.
Dude.
Just enough for them to get the real Robin away, so that when Katarina Devon transforms, she can just like Skywalk or try and fly away, or get Augur to teleport her back. So it's gonna be a moment where Robin's actually been taken for a while and we didn't know.
I mean, yeah, it's been proven that Katarina Devon already knows how to get into character, right?
Yeah.
Like, she's a very good actor.
But we also know she can make slip-ups as those characters as well.
Yeah.
Like, she mimics their body, but not necessarily their memories. So she's got to have, like, some rough prior knowledge.
No, definitely not. Especially since Robin's character... Well, it might be easier to mimic Robin because she's always usually so aloof, right?
Yeah.
Like, she's a lot more stoic, and she's known for being the quiet one, which is why I think it is wise for Katarina Devon to choose Robin, because stoic characters, they really don't have to do that much.
I think a great example would be if it was a theory that may come true. If, say, Robin starts talking heaps going forward, or something like that, because a lot of people like miss, like, Robin's character is really specifically written. She wasn't referring to the Straw Hats by name pre-time skip until she got saved at Annie's lobby, and then she starts calling them by name for the first time. She doesn't speak often, but when she speaks, it's always soft, calm, and really poignant, right? She never argues with anyone on the crew. She always lets everything slide, right? So it's like, if we see her starting to, like, you know, if this is a thing, if she starts doing random shit that's out of character, that would be, like, perfect for it. Also, it may not be Robin. It could be someone like Stussy as well, because it's got less importance to the crew. But I feel like, based on the narrative, it would make a lot of sense for them to want, like, the Blackbeard Pirates to want Robin, since they collected the other Yonko's means of reading the poneglyphs. If that makes sense.
Not only that as well, it's also the idea of, I don't think Katarina would want to pick Stussy because I don't think Katarina has been trained in the same, martial arts
Yeah.
that she's been. So again, having Katarina Devon, she might have Geppo considering, you know, just because, but she's called the Crescent Hunter, Moonwalk,
Mm.
all that good jazz. But I mean, yeah, other than being able to float in the air, I can't really imagine that Katarina Devon has that kind of training.
Also, we don't know if because it's a mythical zone, we don't know if it can mimic other devil fruits or not. So it'd be interesting if, say, Robin shows up and isn't using her ability.
Exactly.
And the reason we've got to think about stuff like this is the arc started with a murder mystery that is now seemingly resolved. But I mean, Oda's been doing it a lot recently, like with Kanjuro and stuff like that, where it's like
I know.
he'll throw in really subtle details and stuff like that, and it's like it's so weird not to see Robin at the end of this chapter. It's jarring. You know what I mean?
Not only that, like, especially at the end of a celebration, like Robin is always there, ever since like they first rescued her, right? Like she has never missed a celebration in quote unquote victory.
You're telling me when a Buster Call shows up and there is contact with the Gorosei that Robin's not present?
I know.
I mean, the entire point of O'Hara is to have been present, right? So it's kind of like it doesn't make any sense for Robin to let them make this call, especially since this call looks like it's under duress, right? It doesn't make sense for them to have made York do this call with Robin not present.
No, it's actually though one of the things that I would really enjoy and that would also amplify like the crew dynamic.
What's
is
that?
if Katarina Devon were to make a slip up and it's Frankie who notices first.
See, I want it to be Zora. I'm a Zora now. I'm a Zora Robin shipper, but I do know that Frankie and Robin have a special friendship.
That's true.
Um,
Frankie has been the only man in the entire story to get the first ever Robin lap. That time that they were caged in Caesar Clowns. Frankie does have that advantage.
They do got that sway. They do got that sway. Also, another possibility that we haven't thought of here is since Saturn's here, there may be a member of the Holy Knights present.
That'll be interesting.
Because he may be, like, Saturn may have a direct bodyguard. If that makes sense.
Oh, God.
And they may be specifically not being shown yet because any member of the God's Knights would be crazy. Because then, right, if Saturn doesn't get involved and you've got Luffy versus Kizaru and say Zoro versus a God Knight that's a swordsman, that could be pretty interesting. Because, I hate to just stick on the matchups of it, right? But it's like, okay, if Lucci and Kaku do flip, right? The only people really strong enough to handle them is Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and maybe Bonnie and Stussy.
Not Jinbei?
Oh, yeah, Jinbei could, but my problem is with Jinbei is, I mean, for example, we just saw him fight Who's Who, right? And he was outclassed in everything but AP. Like,
True.
Who's Who was dancing around him, getting multiple attacks off, and Jinbei couldn't land a hit on him.
Yeah, Jinbei's not really known for... He's got good reaction time, but he's not known for his speed feats.
Kaku and Lucci have already shown way better damage feats than Who's Who. So if they were to fight Jinbei, it's like they're doing a lot more damage to him, And it's not it's not that I think necessarily that like they're just definitively outright stronger than Jinbei, but it's one of those things where it's like we just saw Jinbei fight someone nearly identical, and he didn't struggle with them. I don't know if Oda would put him in the situation where he fights someone identical again and then gets shat on. But then he doesn't give him the same fight twice in a row.
That'd be a little bit of a disservice to Jinbei as well.
Yeah. Like and I mean like say Jinbei beats Rob Lucci. Rob Lucci looks bad. Say Rob Lucci beats Jinbei. Jinbei looks bad.
Yeah, it's not really a fanatical case.
Whereas if it's like Rob Lucci and Kaku versus say Stussy and Bonnie, it's like, oh, okay. Bonnie's abilities are causing them more issue because it's like area of effect stuff. Yep. And Stussy knows how they fight, so she's got an advantage.
Yeah, because Stussy also said so beforehand that she's not stronger than Kaku or Lucci, but she does have means of getting around their
combat.
Getting around the foundations of strength, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god, that just reminded me that Stussy was shown with wings in like that semi-bat form, but at the same point in time, she just put sea stone lipstick on that took out Rob Lucci and Kaku.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how her powers didn't get nerfed out.
Well, she's a clone though, so she could be like a seraphim where her powers are given to her, not a devil fruit.
Yeah, by means of green blood. I'm actually wondering if the seraphim can swim.
I would say they can't, but I would say okay. This is going to be into a weird territory here, right? Could they eject their green blood at any moment?
Just have a random blood transfusion.
Well, we see that section on their wrist that's the green blood, right? Could they remove that? Because they could be technically half cyborg.
Yeah, that'd be cool if it's just like a click-on ring.
So they could remove it and then be able to swim. So if they ever got stuck in water, they could remove it, which is why Vegapunk needs those bubbles that work like sea stone, because once they're caught in the bubble, they can't like just remove it because they're already stuck in it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Oh god, I didn't even think of that. Yo, those anti-devil fruit bubble guns that Vegapunk has, what if they just start shooting those at the fleet? So Kizaru's got to avoid anti-devil fruit bubbles while fighting. Like it's Saturday.
I could imagine Kizaru trying to blast out one of the bubbles, and the bubble's anti-devil fruitness actually deflects it back, and Kizaru ends up doing a lot more damage to his own ships than intended.
I hadn't thought about this yet, but like, what if Vegapunk releases a bunch of bubbles and that also mirrors Saturday with the bubbles? But maybe in this situation, the bubbles pop. Like, you know how at Saturday the bubbles popped, and when they kept popping, it came down to a negative for the Straw Hats? What if the bubbles popping this time around is devil fruit users from the Marines getting hit by these bubbles and losing the ability to fight?
That'd be cool.
So it's like it's a parallel but an inverse of what happened at Saturdays. Because I don't think the Straw Hats are going to lose here. It just depends on how bad the Marines are going to lose. Is it going to be a wipe, or is it going to be the Marines look like they're going to win and Luffy just gets out of it on fate? You know what I mean? Yo, that's giving me a lot to think about now with the bubbles. Because we also know that the pacifistas have bubble shields. So, yo, what if the pacifistas, because we've got the 50 mark pacifistas on the shore, what if the pacifistas can produce bubbles around, say, like the Sunny? So they can sail away as well. So they're trying to sail away, the Marines are trying to board them.
And they end up getting trapped inside bubbles.
Yeah.
That'd be funny. It's like they're right there.
Ah, there is way too many possibilities. Oh,
Imagine getting trapped inside a bubble with somebody else.
yo,
Awkward.
even talking about it. So seeing the panel with where it like has like Navy Admiral Kizaru Borsalino and he's eating his
Mm-hmm.
noodles. Below that, see the panel of him being observed by Vegapunk and a child Sentomaru. That goes a little way to what I was talking about before, because if you look, he's shooting the lasers up in the sky, but it's raining down light in the background.
Yeah.
So it could be something like that, but in the inverse, where instead of shooting the light, he's able to like take the light away from an area.
Yep. No, I definitely heard that one from earlier. It kind of, I don't know. It's actually just an interesting touch because I really don't know how to feel about Kizaru after this chapter, to be honest. Because I've always known that he's been this nonchalant, sarcastic guy who just does what he's told. Like as he said, I am just a cog in the machine. But this one brief panel of him entertaining Sentomaru just by shooting his lasers into the sky, so that he can see it, just for the heck of it, with Vegapunk smiling so innocently in the side. It just tears me apart a little bit because it's like, to me Kizaru is one of those characters who's not good, but he's not bad either.
So Kizaru is one of my favorite characters in the story, not just because of aesthetic and design, but because I think he actually represents one of the most scary things in One Piece. Because you could almost look at him like he's a sociopath, right? He will try to do good, but at the same point in time, he has no emotional problems committing atrocities, right?
Yeah, again, it's not that Kizaru doesn't have a moral compass. It's just that he chooses to ignore it, which I think is even more dangerous.
But at the same point in time, where he's like, "I'm just a cog in the machine," right? He'll say that on one hand, but at the same point in time, he's an admiral and actively leads groups of marines, and is actually out of all the admirals we've seen in the story, is the admiral that has been shown giving orders to subordinates the most.
Which is ironic.
So the thing about Kizaru is he's like perpetually in a state of yes and no. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things that really interests me on his character, because it's like, what is more evil, right? Someone that is doing something bad because they believe it's for the good of the cause, or someone that is doing something bad because they got told to and they don't want to question it. Because weirdly enough, Kizaru, despite being an admiral, so unlike Akainu and Aokiji, Kizaru's more similar to Garp than the other two.
Yeah, I know. Ironically, though, that Kizaru was taught by Sengoku.
Or Z, if you believe Z's canon. Or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, see, this is the thing, right? Kizaru's character is one that interests me a lot, because on one hand, he's really smart, able to dissect people's abilities like Hawkins in seconds. But on the other hand, has a black transponder snail and doesn't know how to tap into stuff.
I know, right?
Right? He's incredibly fast, but talks really slow. Right? He's incredibly passionate, but never shows it and doesn't really care about what's happening. For example, when he didn't defeat the Straw Hats at Sabity, he went out and defeated 500 pirates because he was angry. But, like, was he angry visibly? Or was he just like, oh, I didn't catch them, I'll go out and catch 500 people to catch... Like, they say angry, but it's like, we've never seen him angry, so can we even say it was anger? Like, what's his angry? You know what I mean?
I know, that's the scariest thing, because, yeah, again, Kizaru doesn't wear his heart on his sleeve.
Which could make him even harder to read with observation haki. Because it's like, he may not have intention.
Yeah, exactly, which is why I find it to be a really interesting matchup against Luffy, because Luffy's main concept about his observation haki when he was training with Rayleigh he said it depends on what kind of person I'm fighting. But then again, Luffy's fighting a guy who just doesn't show his emotions.
I think Kizaru's gonna have Conqueror's Haki. Just because I think all the admirals are probably gonna have Conqueror's Haki, or at least the original admirals are gonna have Conqueror's Haki. I think Kizaru is going to have like if I had to describe what he is as a conqueror, I think he's more like a Mihawk, right? And I know Mihawk's not confirmed with Conqueror's Haki, but it's heavily implied that he has Conqueror's Haki, right? Where it's like he's a lone king, like a conquering lone wolf, very similar to Zoro, right? Can give orders when needed to, can care when needed to, but given the opportunity, is a leader on his own.
Yeah, again, like Zoro, like he stands like sorry, again like Mihawk, like he stands on top without the need of having people under him.
Yeah. And I think the threatening thing about that is competency, right? Which scares me here for Kizaru because it's like he's got really good abilities. If the admirals are gonna have Conqueror's Haki, like at the same way that the Yonko do, we're gonna find it out in this fight here, because this is gonna be the first like prolonged fight with an admiral. Same thing with Logia Awakenings. If we're gonna see a Logia Awakening, we're probably gonna see it here, right? The skin.
I'm praying so hard, man, that Kizaru actually gets a proper showing if he does show combat. Like, I don't want to see him just lazily shoot one or two lasers. I actually want to see Kizaru sweat a little bit and show us what makes the Admirals such a terrifying force. Because other than the feat of, again, like Aokiji versus Akainu for 10 days and changing the entire
Landscape.
ecological landscape of an island is absolutely amazing. But the problem is that it was never shown.
The only
right?
way
it's like
the only way I think we don't see it is if Saturn gets involved. Because he would overshadow Kizaru there.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. It's because like again, like admirals should be getting a lot more spotlight now, especially since the Marines are being a lot more involved. Because it's going to, I swear to God, if we do end up getting a Saturn intervention between a Kizaru versus Luffy fight, we're going to get like the Gecko Moria syndrome of like back in Ringo. Everybody's going to be talking about how like they were technically on par with each other, and then yada 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 yada. Because until we actually see like again, I'm not expecting like Kizaru to like start bleeding or like start going like all out like lasers blazing and everything like that, but I at least want to see as to how fast he can actually keep up like in terms of power and speed without dwindling down, you know?
So this is going to be where it gets really interesting, right? Because we've also got the concept of devil fruits getting stronger with their user, right? And like there's a lot of examples of this. Mr. Three's abilities wax. He eats the wax fruit. He can control wax. He gets stronger. His wax is now as strong as steel, right? Doflamingo eats a string fruit, right? His strings are now strong enough to cut pretty much anything. Probably a really good clear example is Akainu eats the magma fruit. Fire is hotter than magma, right? In the real world, fire is hotter than magma. Akainu specifically says, "My fire can burn even. My magma can burn even fire," implying that he got his devil fruit stronger to the point where even he can burn fire. Not that magma's hotter than fire in the One Piece world, but it's a specific trait to him because he made his fruit stronger.
Yeah.
Right? Kizaru sits in a really interesting point because I think a lot of people expect him to be the fastest character in the series at the moment, right? The thing is, though, so from novels, we know that Gear 2 moves at 10 times the speed of light. And you could just say that it's a novel, so it's, it just doesn't count, right? And just hard cap it at light with Kizaru, right? But what I will say is, if that's to be believed, one thing that's really important is we've had a lot of abilities that use light in One Piece, right? Kizaru's lasers, the Pacifista's lasers,
Pacifista,
the Vinsmoke lasers, Queen's lasers,
Frankie's lasers.
right? That we see light speed attacks very frequently, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what's really important about that? We see them. We always see them. Shave goes beyond the sight of the reader, but light doesn't. Which implies Shave, which Gear 2 is just Mastered Shave. It implies narratively that Shave is faster than light. The novels say that Shave moves at 10 times the speed of light. The Marines train in Shave. But what happens... So Shave allows someone with mass to move faster than light, right? We've seen that Kizaru can both have mass and not have mass. We've seen him ride cannonballs, right?
Yep.
So how can Kizaru have the light fruit and be the fastest in the verse, and it be because of his fruit, but also have people move faster than light? Well, what happens if Kizaru uses Shave while he doesn't have mass? Would he not be faster than someone that has mass and uses Shave, even though shaving moves you faster than normal light?
That would be crazy.
Right? So Kizaru can still be the fastest person in the series because of his devil fruit, right? And it not contradict what we've seen in the story so far. Right? And the reason why that sort of stuff is really interesting and really important is because it's like, we talk about this every week for hours on end, right? Oda does it every day for 16 hours. He's had time to think these things through and think about what he wants to portray and doesn't want to portray. Maybe 10 years ago, he didn't have a solid idea of them, but now he's been sitting on his ideas for a... We're closer to the 30-year mark than we are the 20-year mark of One Piece.
Heck, bro, you got to think about this, man. Some people probably have already passed, not knowing what the end of One Piece is.
Exactly, right? So with Kizaru there with that, the reason why I think that's also really interesting is there's only 2 people in the story that... So, you know how I was saying I've gone through the manga recently doing a bunch of research? I've made a folder because we know for a fact that certain people in certain organizations have the same ability but call it different things because of culture, right?
Yeah.
The best example of that is Mantra and Haki. Everyone knows that, right?
Yes.
But we also know that Iron Body is Armament Haki.
Yep, Tekai.
Yeah? So when the Marines go Tekai, what they're pretty much saying is armament hardening. Jinbei, as a fishman, actually calls it shark skin. Doesn't call it either. He knows it's Haki, but he calls it shark skin. So these different cultures have the same ability but call it different things, but it's shown the same way. Alright?
Yep.
So
It's essentially just like, like other nations and like swords. Every nation in, I don't know, every country in history has had a sword, but they're always of different shapes and sizes.
exactly. Right? So
Oh my god. Is that? Hold on. Sorry, New World, just gonna completely derail you for a second there.
yeah.
Is that Panda Woman? Go to the part where it's saying Navy Admiral Kizaru Porcelino with the head titles. If you look up,
Oh my god!
pan in between the 2 Marines, is that Panda Lady?
Is it Panda Lady or Panda Man?
I have no idea, but they are eating a bowl of ramen.
I think it's Panda Man, and what looks like the bra is the ramen bowl.
I see.
Yeah, no, you spotted Panda Man. Perfect. I love that.
God damn.
But yeah, so for example, right? In the manga,
Mhm. Continue.
we've got shave. It's a specific technique. It's called shave, right? But we have other people
Yep.
that are shown doing the exact same thing the exact same way, but don't call it that. For example, we know Luffy in Gear 2 is just using shave, right? All Gear 2 is shave, right? But we see,
I mean, heck, even all the way back when Captain Kuro used an incomplete version of
see,
Shave.
and that's the only outlier in the story in terms of how it's actually visually shown. And Oda even has gone back on record saying, I retconned that to be this in
Yes.
SBS. So that is the single outlier, but Oda has already addressed it, right? As an outlier. So it's like, he didn't have it thought out then. He figured out how he's going to represent it going forward in his lobby and starts portraying it from there, right? There's only a very finite few. Actually, I have a folder up on my phone right now that I can pull up, and I can tell you everyone that ever uses a ability of hyper speed in One Piece that looks like shave. Hang on. I'll bring this up. Because the funny thing is, like, I think a lot of people chain scale speed in One Piece, going, oh, this person moved faster than this person, so they're faster, sort of thing, instead of they have the same technique and one person used it before the other. Because that does make a huge difference there in representation. Right? I'm looking for shave, aren't I? Here we go. So, these are all the people that use it. So, we see Rob Lucci use it. We see Bluno use it. We see Nero say he's going to use it, but never actively be able to use it. And it's really funny because it's played off for a gag because he can't use it. Right?
I know.
So he says shave and then he just sprints and it doesn't actually do anything. And then Frankie just drops him. Right? We've got Kaku who uses it. We've got Fukuro that uses it. Khalifa uses it. Jabra uses it. Kumadori, like all CP9 use it. Right? But then after CP9, the next time we see someone use it, and it's always like the line effect of disappearing, and a zip, whip, or shunk sound effect. The shunk sound effect is when someone does it when they have a club. There's only 2 people in the series that do the shunk sound effect. Do you know who they are?
No.
Kaido and Kiros. And it's because they use bludgeoning weapons.
Oh.
So it's a heavy shunk instead of like this whip of speed. It's a shunk, right?
Okay.
The first person that isn't a CP9 member or Luffy to use shave is actually Lafitte in the fight against Ace. When Ace does the fire fist to them, and it knocks all the Blackbeard pirates over, we actually see Lafitte return from Marijua. And he shaves in mid-combat.
Yeah.
Right? Then we see Kobe do it. But the interesting thing is, the people that use these abilities, just because they're using this ability and it's a set speed, the most important thing is actually your mobility while using it. For example, Kuro could do it, but he couldn't see. So you could predict his movements, and with an area of effect attack, take him out easily. Right? Kobe could do it, but he could only use it in very linear lines. Right? He could just do it straight. Just like a lot of CP members. But if you look at Lucci was doing it zipping around more than once. Right? So
most definitely.
So it's not a tier speed, it's a mobility speed, and how many times can you activate the ability. That's a very important thing there. Because it's like if you're playing a video game and you've got a dodge bar. You've got 3 dodges in your dodge bar, and you're fighting someone that's got 5 dodges in their dodge bar. Who looks better? You know what I mean?
I see your point, yes.
It makes it hard, right? So after Kobe, the next person that we see be able to do it is Little Oars. Oh, sorry, not Little Oars. It's Oars Jr. Oh, it's Oars, right? Frozen Oars.
Yeah.
Right? And that's because it's got Luffy's shadow. So that's proving that it's not your body that's required to use the technique. It's a technique. It's a skill that's learned. Because a lot of people confuse it with moonwalk. A lot of people think that shave is your leg muscles are so strong that you can just high speed move. No, that's the explanation for moonwalk, not shave. There is no.
Shave was just the practice of learning how to repeatedly like move along with like making multiple steps as you go, right?
No, they never actually explain what shave is. So moonwalk is kicking the air 10 times in an instant to fly and needing super strong leg muscles. They never actually explain shave. Right? And that's the thing. People conflate moonwalk's explanation with shave.
Yes. Okay. Fair enough. That's a good nuance to know.
So, the next two people that use it are Dalmatian and Momonga in Marineford. When they tag team Luffy. Right?
Yep.
After that, we don't see it again pre-time skip. That means pre-time skip, it was CP9, Luffy, Lafitte, and 2 Vice Admirals that used it. That is it. That is not a whole lot of people. And those people, pre-time skip at least, were pretty high tier. Right? Post-time
I'm confident that Luffy probably would have lost to, like, against one of the Vice Admirals. Like, granted, if they were power scaled to this time, Luffy would probably lost to a Vice Admiral 1v1.
Oh, yeah. Which gets to the next point that's funny, right? So, someone that's weaker than you can have certain techniques that you don't have. And it can make them look better, but it doesn't make them overall better. Right?
Yep. Perfect example of this would be the Apu when he first encountered Luffy and Zoro fight.
Exactly.
Like Apu just had an arsenal that was depicted to deal with people who, again, outclass him in every which way, but given that Apu's ability, it just completely streamlined below whatever foundations that Luffy and Zoro had above him in, like, physicality.
So, this is where I get disrespectful. You ready?
Go ahead.
So, then we get to Punk Hazard. That's the next time Shave is shown that's a new user, right? It's important to note, Luffy uses Shave for the first time in Punk Hazard, not in Gear 2. Just in base.
Yeah.
But he only uses it a single time. He only can make one movement with it. Very similar to what the CP members do pre-time skip, where their body can only handle it once. Right? Then Luffy goes Gear 2 and proceeds...
He's zipping around.
But yeah, you know that scene where he's just darting around Smoker?
Yeah.
Right? So he can do it in base, but he can only do it once. Goes into Gear 2, he can maintain it. That just shows the difference in mobility.
Yeah.
Right? And that's sort of what I'm getting at. That's what... And I'm bringing this back around. That's why when a lot of people are like, Luffy in base has surpassed his gears prior in Wano, because base Luffy was fighting Kaido equally. It's like, I think you guys aren't necessarily understanding what's being represented, where it's Luffy doesn't necessarily get faster in all these gear forms. He just gets the ability to use his speed more aggressively. Like, he gets to spam his move instead of just doing it once or twice.
It's not so much that Luffy has received an augmentation in speed or or a change of tactics or whatever. It's more so Luffy just broadening his area of attack.
It's his versatility of it.
Yeah.
Right? So, Luffy uses Shave and zips all around Smoker, right? The next person to use it is Virgo. So at the moment, we've got 3 Vice Admirals using it, and the CP9 members using it. And apart from that, there isn't even 5 people yet in the story that can use shave. And I say use shave, these people that aren't Marines, I'm counting it as shave if they have the visual effect and a sound effect of like disappearing, going swip or whip, right? And I've got all of this saved as a big folder, right? So it's like there are very few people that are fast in that regard showing this technique, right? The next person we see use it is Tashigi, which is where I get to the point where Smoke has never shown the ability to use shave or keep up with shave, but Tashigi's been shown being able to use it. But the thing about Tashigi being able to use it is she only was able to use it once and go a couple of meters. So she doesn't have the ability to spam it or keep it up for a prolonged period of time. So someone like Smoker would be stronger than her because she can dodge one attack, but then the follow-up attack, it may be too taxing. If that makes sense. Right?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Then we get a rough outlier. Now, this could be either. I've included it here just because it's important to include all examples of the visual and audible sound effect of it, right? It seems like the Tontadas can do it as a race trait. But because they're so tiny, they can only do it over like 30 centimeter stints.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, being born with, again, inherently a strong body is not unknown in One Piece. Big Mom, Kaido, even the Funk brothers being a good example.
We've got the Minks that can use Electro. It makes sense that if the Tontadas are born with inherent speed, but because they're so small, their speed doesn't matter because it's over a very short distance.
Yeah, exactly. So, what was it? Species being born with the ability to shave off right at the bat isn't something that's completely absurd because fishmen, again, they're just naturally 10 times stronger than the average man.
Now, the next example is Kiros, right? But the thing about Kiros is, and this is really important because again, this goes back to mobility with this ability, right? He can use it multiple times, but he can only do it over a very short distance.
Thanks to his one leg.
So he can go side to side and go whip, 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 but he can't go more than sort of like an arm's length distance from what we've seen of him.
Yeah.
Whereas someone like Luffy...
He can't go farther than a full leg stride, pretty much.
Whereas Luffy, doing the same ability shown the same way with the same effects, gets much bigger distance where he's able to zip around to. So again, it comes down to mobility of it, right? The next example, and I love to bring this up, that is what Cavendish does in his Hakuba form. He just gains the ability to use shave as a swordsman. That's it. But he's able to maintain it. He has high mobility.
Yeah, especially like given like again, Cavendish is just a strong individual in general. So when Hakuba essentially activates his innate talent and potential, he just goes wild, man.
And see, the interesting thing...
He was zipping around Bartolomeo's barrier thing.
Yep. Also, I'd like to point out, up until this point in the manga, and I'm in the ending of Dressrosa at the moment, Sanji hasn't displayed this ability once yet.
No, he hasn't. I'm also rereading, man. I've just finally finished my Skypiea arc.
Oh, I love Skype. Skypiea is my favorite arc in the manga. I'm not even kidding. I think the art is phenomenal.
It is an excellent arc to me, but I've always had a sore spot for Thriller Bark. I don't know why.
Glitter's favorite arc is Thriller Bark.
Nice.
I can't comprehend it. The two of you weird me out. But I gotta respect it. After Cavendish, the next person to use it, and he only uses it very scarcely, is Doflamingo.
Yeah, Doflamingo was an odd one because I would have expected a guy like him to be able to like use his strings as a platform to shave from one to the other as he saw fit, but I guess that was not the case.
See, we see him use shave to dodge Luffy's Hawk Gatling, right?
Yeah.
But we also see him use Shave to dodge Luffy's gear. And again, it's important to note, right? The reason why I say this, all Gear 2 is Shave. Right? Doflamingo's going comparative with Gear 2. Doing this technique.
Without even...
It's not implied...
Without even any kind of, like, augmentation.
Yeah. See, and the thing is interesting, right? Because it's like... The only thing that people can really use to imply that Luffy got faster pre and post time skip is him saying the Pacifista laser beams are slow at Savity. But that's his reaction getting faster, and thus with his reaction getting faster, he can activate his ability quicker. It's not necessarily a speed boost, it's a perception boost and the ability to activate his ability that he can spam more often because he can see things like more preemptively. So it comes across as speed. Right? After Dofi, the next person to use Shave is Katakuri. Right? And it's really funny because you know that scene where Katakuri like whip kicks Luffy in the head?
Yeah.
That's when he uses Shave for the first time, and he uses it more than once in the fight. Right? After that, in Whole Cake Island, Sanji uses Shave for the first time when he saves Pound. That's the first time. That is the first time in the manga he's shown doing it. And I went through every panel of the entire manga looking for him. Just as Easter eggs. That is wild to think, because everyone just assumes Sanji's like one of the fastest people. It wasn't until Whole Cake that he actually started getting these speed feeds. The next person to use it is Ulti.
Yeah.
And we all...
Ulti is really the most powerful Toby Robo in terms of feats.
See, we all talk about how ridiculous Ulti is because she's far, exceeded what we thought. But she also looked really fast, didn't she? Again.
Yeah.
She's just using Shave. Right? The next person, and I'm going to preface this for anyone that's watching and maybe not necessarily like listening per se to what I'm saying, just to re-emphasize this, right? King in the anime is over Katakuri. Katakuri in the manga is over King. That's just the way the mediums have sort of shown their capabilities. Like, King in the anime was, like, making multiple lava dragons melt the rooftop. And, like, doing it at high speed, right? And, like, zipping around everywhere. In the manga, King only uses what looks like Shave once in the fight. That one moment where he speed blitzes Zoro and kicks him in the face is the only time he uses advanced speed in the entire manga.
Yeah.
Right? And, like, it's funny because, like, I've had so many conversations with people where they're like, King is so much faster than Katakuri. Katakuri's got no shot. And I'm like, Katakuri's shown the same speed feat in the manga as King, but has shown it more often.
Yeah, again, it's that whole stigma of the trope of the next villain needing to be stronger than the last one. That's why I feel like Katakuri kind of gets thrown under the bus in that sense, and King gets overrated. Again, King is a monster in his own right. Don't even get me started, because the Seraphim clones themselves already show all of his regenerative capabilities, and they're just copies, right? Not the original. Yeah. But to say that Katakuri hasn't... I mean, I'm going to just outright say it. Say that Katakuri hasn't surpassed King in terms of combat feats, I don't know, man.
See, and just while we're on this topic,
I like, in terms of like King versus Katakuri, I gotta give it like 6-4 in Katakuri's favor every time.
So this is really interesting, right? Because and just since we're talking about this Shave feats and stuff like that, right? King as a race, like Lunarians as a race, can choose to either be as physically durable, arguably a little bit more durable than Kaido,
Mm-hmm.
or use shave. They can pick one or the other and swap between them. Why are we acting like that isn't an awesome ability? But like, why are we also pretending like he can also be that fast all the time? He has to pick between them. That's the drawback for him. Just like
Yeah.
just like Katakuri has to use observation haki to seem intangible. Otherwise he gets hurt and hit. Right? And see, this is the thing, right? The where I draw the line between King versus Katakuri is Katakuri has more area of effect because of his awakened devil fruit. And if King is matching him in speed, Katakuri is able to hurt him. If King is not matching Katakuri in speed and instead in his defensive form, why would Katakuri not try to suffocate him like he tried to suffocate Luffy? Drown him in mochi. That's not to say that King isn't ridiculously strong, right? And that there aren't people out there that King may have an easier time beating in a fight than Katakuri. But in a matchup between the both of them, it's like, look at how their characters operate. King has to choose between being as fast as Katakuri or more durable than him. He's not both at the same time. But once he's in one of those forms, it's like, okay, so say King is as fast as Katakuri. It's like, at that point in time, it's like, that's like saying Zoro versus Katakuri equals stats. You know what I mean? It's like, it could go either way. It's a close fight. But if you say Katakuri just has better area of effect and stuff like that, because it's like, he can punch you from multiple angles from range. Like, it's ridiculous. You know what I mean? And that's not even taking into consideration his advanced armament or potential conqueror's haki in that regard. Right? I personally lean on Katakuri winning, but I think it's like you said, it's like a 60-40 split. It's not like Katakuri wins every single fight.
Yeah, it's not like some sort of stagnant increasing amount of soup again insert. It's not like King can't beat Katakuri, all considering, because again, circumstances, area, types of terrain, what they're fighting for, and the drive. But yeah, I mean, in terms of just like raw feats and everything that's been shown in the manga, I have to give the edge to Katakuri.
See, and the flip of it is, right? Okay, say King tries to burn him with his flames, right? We've seen Katakuri be, I don't want to say immune, but unaffected by heat. His mochi isn't affected by heat. Right?
Yeah, it just cooks quicker.
Well, he actually uses the heat for explosive force in his advantage.
Yep.
Whereas someone like Perispero has a clear weakness to heat.
Yeah.
So you can't say that, he'll just burn his mochi. It's like, that, based on what we've seen, that's not how it works. Because we saw Luffy's Red Hawk melt candy, right? But it'd have zero effect on Katakuri's regular mochi. So you gotta consider these things. The next person to use shave is Who's Who, right? Again, really important here for everyone questioning this. Who's Who being one of the fastest beast pirates and a former CP9 member who actively is telling you, I'm using shave. Right? It's very important to note here. It's staying consistent. Luffy in Gear 2, anyone Luffy fights in Gear 2 is shaves, like, they can keep up with Gear 2. That's shave speed. Jinbei's latest opponent could use shave and was outpacing Jinbei. Right? It's also important to note, though, I say outpacing Jinbei. Jinbei actually showcases using shave a single time, but it was only a sidestep of about a meter. That's the only time he's ever shown speed.
Yeah.
And the problem is he's a big guy, so he doesn't showcase speed feats. Kaido uses shave against Gear 5, and it's the only time Kaido doesn't use shave until Luffy goes Gear 5. Think about that. All the speed feats Kaido had prior to that didn't use shave. Bam. You have Guernica, the CP0 member, use shave to take out X Drake, right? Then Garp uses shave before Aokiji and blitzes Aokiji, throws him down the blue hole, right? But then you've got so like I said, you've got Jinbei who uses it, but he only uses it to sidestep one attack, and that's when who's using the Fang pistols on him, right? And one example, because I found this panel a bit later, like it didn't upload properly. Sorry, it came out of sequence. You have Rebecca who can use shave, but without moving her feet. So she can stand stationary and dodge at the speed of shave, but she can't move at the speed of shave. If that makes sense.
I see.
Again, going back to that mobility issue, right? And those are all the characters in the story that have canonically moved at high speeds. And the funny thing about that is, those are also all the people in the story that we say have high speed movement. There's obviously people that are outliers that can use abilities as well, like Kuma can reject himself to teleport around. Law can also do that.
But that's not really...
But that's not a physical feat.
That's not really shave. No, it's not.
It's not shown the same way. It's a different ability, right? It's a devil fruit ability.
Exactly.
But the reason why I bring that up, right? There are clear differences in mobility there, right? For example, someone like Rebecca that can't move her feet and can just weave at that speed doesn't look as good as someone like Tashigi who can sidestep at that speed, right?
Yeah.
But Tashigi doesn't look as good as Luffy who can just zip around at that speed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who also doesn't look as good as Katakuri, who can not only move at that speed, but we also see him move at that speed while intangible.
Exactly.
He dodges at that speed to dodge, say, Luffy's Gear 4 punches and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, everybody is capable of using shave. It's just in the means of how they apply it and to what physical limitations that they've rendered themselves to.
The funny thing about it is, like, when people look at these abilities, if you look at that out of context, you can say that this person's faster than this person that's faster than this person, instead of looking at it and go, oh, they're moving the same speed, but do you know what the difference is? Their perception. For example, right? Someone with future sight and shave looks faster than someone without future sight.
Yes, of course, because the person with future sight is able to anticipate and perceive, which means that they're able to alter their route if need be.
They're also able to
change their angle,
activate the ability first, because they know when to activate it before them to outpace them.
Yep.
Right? Because that's a big thing. If these abilities, like, and there is an outlierish group in it, which I don't know how to necessarily scale 100%, which is the swordsman, because I can make an argument that any sheath and unsheath technique moves at the same speed.
Yeah, I mean, again, like Zoro's quick draw technique, that's definitely a shave technique in my book.
The problem is with the sheath and unsheath techniques, we've never once seen it happen on in the panel on manga.
I know. That's the big problem, right?
It's always...
we don't really have a proper reference.
They always name the attack, and then you just see them after. So you never see it happen. Right? But I would make the argument there that there's not a lot of swordsmen that have even shown that ability yet in the story. The only people that have shown that ability is the likes of Zoro, Ryuma, Brook, and it's also really important to note, right, that when Ryuma and Zoro fought, it's the only time in the entire story that two people have done a sheath-unsheath technique at the same time, and it clashed them equally. The only time it's happened in the entire story. Is that not wild?
It is wild, but yeah.
Anyway, I've got on my speed tangent. I'm sure you're getting tired, so we'll wrap this up in a minute.
It's all good, bro.
The only things that I'll really say is one weird thing was the Bonnie comment this chapter.
Body comment?
Yeah. Hang on.
Oh, sorry, by Saturn. Yeah, talking about Bonnie, about letting her live.
Yeah. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
She has so one more thing, Saint Saturn. The pirate jewelry Bonnie, the glutton, has been sighted on the island. Kuma's daughter. She has no more benefit to us. Leave her there. She's just a girl. Understood.
Little girl.
So, this is off the Viz. She's just a girl.
Okay.
But that was in the other scan that I read, so I know exactly what you're talking about there, right? The problem is with that is we also know that Saturn's the most empathetic Gorosei member, because the only times
Yeah.
I've seen sad emotions from a Gorosei member, it's been Saturn in the story.
He's definitely still got, like, again, he's still working for a corrupt agency, but he still has signs of proper humanity in a sense.
Yeah. So it's highly probable that this is just him trying to be a good-natured dude, right?
Mm-hmm. And maybe he's a lot more aware of Kuma's situation.
The other possibility is that Bonnie is really like a little girl who's aging herself up to be roughly 24.
Mm-hmm.
She could be like 10 and under.
Which is very dangerous because people can get cold of all sorts of things for that kind of stuff.
But, right, we don't have a definitive age for her. And the reason why this is really sort of like, how's it going, is because it's like him referring to her as, oh, she's just a girl. He might be taking sympathy on a kid, but he didn't take sympathy on Robin when they gave Robin a bounty.
No, and it's another thing too, because I like, again, we don't know what Kuma, like, I'm almost like 100% certain that Kuma adopted Jewelry Bonnie, right? So Jewelry Bonnie doesn't have any knowledge of the Void Century. She doesn't, like, again, she was probably just an orphan girl who happened to stumble upon Kuma's path. So that's probably why Saturn's a-okay with letting her go, is because she just outright doesn't know anything. Or at least it's been shown that she doesn't know anything about the world government's, like, past or anything like that.
Or she has no interest in it, so they don't worry about her because she has no. It's kind of like Shanks, you know.
Yep.
They're like, oh, he's a problem. If we deal with him, we'll deal with him. But at the same point in time, if he's not interfering with us, let him be.
Yeah. Again, it's like they're just live and let live at this point, right? With her, it's really like she put, like, in this point of time, in a political sense, Julia Bonnie poses no threat to the world government.
Yeah.
Which is why, yeah, I'm okay with Saturn's point of view on this, because a lot of people would say, like, oh, but you know, he's a Gorosei. There's no way that he would let Jewelry Bonnie leave. But again, Jewelry Bonnie doesn't really fit the niche of, like, opposing the world government willingly. It's more so that she's just been dragged in because her father figure in Kuma has been taken away from her. That's the whole reason why. If it wasn't for Kuma's situation, Jewelry Bonnie probably would have never become a pirate.
Yeah, I definitely get that. See, the whole thing with the Gorosei here is interesting, right? And especially since the chapter ends with the whole York reveal, because the world government wants a Vegapunk, right? To make the Mother Flame.
Yes.
The Straw Hats have a Vegapunk, which makes sense, because they're also a competing factor. We know the Blackbeard pirates are on the island but haven't done anything yet. They probably want a Vegapunk as well. Meaning this could split, and I'm gonna hedge a bet here that's a bit off, but I think there's some ground for it. I think we're gonna see some revolutionaries here soon. Okay?
Okay.
I think the Revolutionary Army was set up at the beginning of the arc with Shaka talking to Dragon, right? I think the aftermath of this arc is going to be all but 4 Vegapunks die. And those 4 Vegapunks are going to be split between the major organizations
Yeah.
for the final
I
saga.
see. I see. One for the Blackbeard pirates, one for the government, one for the Straw Hats,
And one for the
and one
revolutionaries.
for revolutionaries. I see. I see.
And those are going to be the real 4 contenders for like the king of the world status. End of story. Right? Because we've got people like Shanks and that at the moment that are definitely a threat. But there's no possibility of Shanks ending up king of the world come end of series.
No.
Right? The world government is the current king. Dragon wants to overthrow the current king. Luffy is who's probably going to be the real king. And Blackbeard would be the worst possible choice for the real king. So it makes a lot of sense for them to divvy up. And again, we had Dragon talking to Shaka at the beginning of the arc. Right? So there's already a precedent for Vegapunks being in some form of relation with the revolutionaries. Now, Shaka, we don't know if Shaka's dead or not, because last time we saw him, he got shot. Right?
Yeah.
But I will say there are the best thing about them being like them having so many Vegapunks is all of them are supposed to be as smart as each other. But
just in different ways.
Yeah. And they all have shared memory. So the thing is, even if some are better at certain things now, they still all have
That
access
doesn't
to
mean
the
it'll
same
stay
ability.
that way, yeah.
Right? So it's like anything that Vegapunks made up until now, any of the Vegapunks can replicate. Because they all have that same knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But going forward, if they separate, depending on which Vegapunk you take, might change what gets made or what doesn't get made. If that makes sense.
I see. Yep. I get it.
Again, it's really important. All the satellites, when put together, are meant to make Vegapunk's personality, right? So, York's ambition and, like, conniving nature exists in Vegapunk. It's just suppressed by the other emotions.
Yeah, I know, because, again, it's the whole issue of, like, Vegapunk's morality being a little skewed, because he did reduce Kuma to a zombie-like state.
Yeah.
And he did it in the name of research. Again, the world government didn't get their hands on Kuma until Vegapunk actually had already done the procedure. So this already tells me that Vegapunk would have been willing to do it even without the world government's pressure on his back.
Yeah.
Just in order to learn it, which is also kind of like skewed and messed up in its own way because, again, you're taking a trusted friend and you're just willingly tearing out his brain and thoughts.
The question is, if it was to go down that way, which Vegapunk do you think would go with which organization?
Honestly, I would say Pythagoras, the one who comes up with ideas, would probably go to the world government because they've always been so much more far keen on developing their technology.
You think Pythagoras over York being portrayed to be the obvious frontrunner at the moment?
York?
Yeah, since York gave them the Mother Flame and has requested to join the Celestial Dragons.
Oh, wait a second. I mean, honestly, I could imagine York being forced to go with Blackbeard if they arrived during the mid-scuffle. Like, York to me is like also like a bit of a coward, right? So she'll just cut her losses when she can. If she can't get together with the Marines, she'll just offer her services to the Blackbeard pirates instead. And she'll gravitate towards them because they're already kind of skewed.
I definitely think that York would fit well with the Blackbeard pirates, especially because she's tall and all the Blackbeard pirates are giantly tall.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the one that might actually be more interesting to go with Blackbeard is Lilith, the evil.
Yeah. I actually thought that maybe Lilith would actually go with the Marines.
I could definitely see either, and the thing is, the world government just needs one of the Vegapunks.
Exactly.
Right? It is being set up to be York, but it doesn't mean it's going to stay York. York will do whatever York needs to do to survive this. right? But what I will say is, if York wants, so York wants to be a celestial dragon. If York doesn't go with the Marines here and instead goes with Blackbeard, Blackbeard's currently trying to ally with the world government. And now that he's got Garp, he's got the leverage to go, I'm going to give you back your hero if I can become a member of the world government. So it's like, York could go with Blackbeard and still get to the same result. But, right, I think, not just because Lilith was called Lilith the Evil, but because Lilith actually took pleasure in raiding and ransacking ships, it would make a lot of sense for her to actually join the Blackbeard pirates. Because all they do is pillage. You know what I mean? Whereas York goes to the world government, we, the Straw Hats, take the real Vegapunk, and that just leaves another one to go with the revolutionaries. The problem is that Shaka is potentially dead, and Pythagoras, I think, is potentially dead. Is it Pythagoras that got crushed by the Seraphim Boa?
Yeah, that little walkie-talkie looking guy.
Yeah, so Pythagoras and Shaka are potentially already gone, only leaving Atlas and one other, I think. I can't remember the other one off the top of my head. Wait, this is...
Here. So you've got Vegapunk, Shaka, Lilith, Edison, Pythagoras, Atlas, and York.
So wait, Shaka and Pythagoras are dead. So it's between... Yep. So that just leaves 4. Lilith, York, the original Vegapunk, and... What was the last one's name again?
Atlas?
Atlas, there. So Atlas goes with the revolutionaries then. Makes a lot of sense though, doesn't it?
Atlas, yeah. I mean, Atlas is definitely like a lot more like she's a fighter, but she's also like very like protective and well spirited. So she would just meld in really well with the revolutionaries.
I mean, you've also got to think about the fact that from her aesthetic standpoint, she is kind of steampunky.
Yeah.
Which is like a big thing for the revolutionaries, since they have that sort of aesthetic to them. But she's also very soft looking like the revolutionaries, because all the revolutionaries, although they've got like steampunk and very like outlandish designs, they're all also very like kind to the people looks about them.
Yep.
So I think that may end up what's happening, which would be funny, because if I'm right about the tsunami coming, the tsunami could be made even worse if, say, Dragon comes and kicks up a storm.
Everybody's screwed, man.
The question is, where would the Straw Hats go? Are we going to a random island and going after the man marked by flames, or Elbath, or what?
I know, that's the problem. Like, I really can't tell you, man. Like, I don't have any predictions.
I think we have to go to Elbath.
I know that, but if we go to Elbath, we're going to meet Eustace Kid again.
Which would be perfect.
Wouldn't be a bad thing. Wouldn't be a bad thing, but again, like, would Oda just give Eustace Kid a huge L, then reintroduce him so quickly again?
He would, if the L that Eustace Kid gets results in him catching up with Luffy.
Getting a dub? Yeah, I mean, again, like,
he does...
Eustace Kid on the island, like a literal island of giant warriors, right?
Yeah.
And Kid's definitely got the spirit of a giant.
Well, if Kid starts unlocking advanced forms of Haki, that would catch him up to Luffy quite significantly.
It would. It might even put him again up ahead of Law as well. Like, again, I understand how people would put Law above Kid in many scenarios as well, because of Law's also innate ability and his techniques, but a lot of people don't give Eustace Kid enough credit, in the sense that despite having a quote unquote average Joe body, like he's amazingly like still like strong.
I think the thing that we also don't take into consideration enough as well is Kid getting any advanced form of Haki makes him significantly more threatening than the people that have advanced Haki already. Right?
Yeah, because you do magic electromagnetic waves being affected by Rio.
Well, I mean, okay. Zoro fights with a sword, right?
Mm-hmm.
Zoro puts Ryo in his sword and is able to do colossal damage. Or Conqueror's Haki on his sword does colossal damage, right? Like, look what he did to King. Now, imagine Kid doing that and being able to apply, like, Conquerors or Advanced Armament to it, but it's also a tornado of swords.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, that looks a lot more threatening. So these other characters need to be ahead him for longer before they give him those abilities to catch him up. Just like I was saying before, Killer's never shown a projectile sword slash in the story. Killer's swordsman, Killer hasn't shown armament hardening, or advanced, or projectile slashes or anything, right? The funny thing about the Kid Pirates is they've actually never shown Haki in the story outside of observation.
I know, and other than like Kaido's statement of Kid having conquerors.
But just because they've never shown it doesn't mean that they won't ever show it. It's just they could have been being saved for it so that they don't steal spotlight away from the Straw Hats.
Yeah, I know, which is why I have an issue with the Straw Hats going to Elbaf because like again, like it's going to interfere with whatever is going to happen with Eustace Kid. Again, I don't have an issue with seeing Eustace Kid and his crewmates again. It's just having them introduced with the Straw Hats in a sense, where they're both coming into the same struggle. It'll be like a Wano version point two, right? But a little bit downgraded because you don't have the same quote unquote stakes yet. Like Elbaf hasn't really been as I guess hyped up as Wano in a sense because
Yeah.
we haven't really heard that Elbaf is in any kind of like huge major conflict. All we've ever heard is that Elbaf is just occupied by extremely powerful warriors. And from what we've seen, Elbaf seems to be in good condition since that Shanks was already there with Dory and Broggy. So I don't see. I guess again I don't see the stakes set for Elbaf yet. Again, there could definitely be some underlying things because
Okay.
Loki is the king, but as far as in concern of like Elbaf's importance, I just don't see it yet.
What if these are the stakes? So Kid's on Elbaf. Elbaf is in between Egghead and Winter Island. Law is
Mm-hmm.
fleeing Winter Island. Straw Hats are about to flee Egghead. All three meet back up at Elbaf. Right? The difference being, Kid and Law's crews have been annihilated at elsewhere, and the Straw Hats are all together. Now begins the next big dilemma, right? Kid wants to get revenge against the Giants, but Luffy's friends with Kid. Luffy's also friends with the Giants, so Luffy doesn't want to fight either of them, but they want to fight each other. Right? Meanwhile, you've got Law, who's trying to ask for help to leave the island to go save his crew or get his get back against Blackbeard, right? Facilitating the perfect place for Law and Kid to start learning advanced forms of Haki from the strongest warriors in the world. Because where Luffy and Zoro got tutored by the Pirate King and the world's greatest swordsman, Law and Kid never got that. But they could get that in Elbaf if they put their pride aside and start learning from the strongest warriors in the world. And it could also fit into Luffy doesn't have a conflict with the citizens of Elbaf, but he has a conflict when Loki tries to rule over Luffy, causing Luffy to begrudgingly pick a side against the Giants, but also with all the Giants wanting to back Luffy. that could create an interesting rift there from like that perspective, especially since so many giants owe Luffy and Usopp a debt of gratitude, and they're all back on Elbaf. But we also know that the likes of Loki, right, has like a crush on, say, the likes of Lola and stuff like that. But we don't know if maybe he's got a grudge against the Straw Hats for having, you know, conflict with Big Mom, despite the rest of the Giants hating Big Mom.
Yep.
Like, it could get messy. You know what I mean? Especially since Usopp's a liar and the Giants all owe him debt. And we also know the Giants celebrate the god of the sun, and Luffy's quite literally the sun god. So that could be where Luffy actually finds out what his devil fruit is.
Could you imagine if the Giants end up hearing the drums of liberation and they actually know what it is?
That would be one of the most chilling moments in One Piece.
Could you imagine? Because again, like Elbaf is already known for being a really ancient place, so it would not surprise me that they would also have knowledge of the sun god Nika and everything like that. Like maybe like I don't know, like once like one of the older giants just happens to hear it and they're like, "The drums of liberation!"
See, there's also the fact that Saw's there, right? So we have Robin's reunion with Saw, unless Robin's kidnapped by the Blackbeard pirates here. Because imagine if Robin gets a reunion with Saw, but doesn't have a reaction. And then you realize it's Katarina Devon. Because that would be heartbreaking for Saw. You know what I mean? And it would also mean when there's finally poneglyphs around, we don't have Robin to just read them. Just how Oda always teases us with poneglyphs. Constantly keeping them out of the main story so we never know what's happening. There's so much that can happen to Elbaf. And like, you know,
Yeah.
The problem is we're talking about Elbaf like Egghead Island isn't about to be super crazy and super entertaining, right? I feel weird. Like I've just like had that snapback where it's like we've got an intention talking about how cool Elbaf's gonna be. It's like no, Egghead Island is the shit right now. I don't want to leave here anytime soon, but right, I could see us jumping away from here and going to Elbaf pretty quickly, which could be interesting because if we escape the fleet here, but Saturn gives us the order to have the fleet follow, it could follow them to Elbaf. Right? Where you've got Luffy, Law, Kid, and the world's strongest army holding off the world government. Because then, imagine Saint J. Garcia and I'm just going to say Odin, the leader of the Giants, having a communication, essentially arguing over Sun God Luffy, Sun God Nika. How intense that could be.
Oh man.
The problem is, there's so many random things. I've just thrown so many things at the wall. Hopefully one of them sticks.
It'll probably stick and then we'll just see it drag down across the wall.
Yeah. That being said, unfortunately, next chapter is on break, but it's a Shonen Jump break, so we're getting the chapter early, but not super early. So, we're probably going to get this chapter maybe early next week, but then we're going to have like the break.
Probably like a Wednesday or something like that, like 2 days ahead of schedule or something.
Yeah, but we're gonna do that when that rolls around. That being said, we've been going for over 3 hours. I'm sure you want to go to bed. I want to eat dinner. I'm hungry. All right.
No problem, bro.
Do you have any theories for the next chapter?
I am anticipating some sort of like interference. It's either again like maybe the Blackbeard pirates will finally decide to go into action, or maybe Saturn will have already accounted for any sort of in like Saturn will voice his insecurities, but already have countermeasures for him. That's what I'm hoping for.
Okay. My prediction for next chapter is Kizaru makes a landfall. That's about it. I think Kizaru and some not the vice admirals, but Kizaru and some fodder are gonna make landfall on Egghead, right? And the fleet's gonna be on standby because Kizaru's gonna like go and try to probe the frontier dome.
Okay.
Because
okay, I see that.
the defense mechanism is lasers. Kizaru is light, so the lasers won't work on him. So he's like the only person that can go in and out without repercussion.
Yeah, that'll be sick to see.
So it's like everyone else will be on standby, and maybe it'll be Kizaru's mission to try and shut down the defense, right? So the invasion can start. That's going to be my prediction for it. Otherwise, we're not going to sit around and do nothing. So I think the siege has to start. Seeing as how the world government is the antagonizers, I think they've got to make the move. Kizaru is just the dude that just jumps in and gets shit done. Like, it's like Sabity, you know what I mean? He's just going to come in on his own, just do his own thing. Which may screw him up, because he may go in there a little too cocky and not get beaten, but start to get, like, overnumbered and be like, oh, they're stronger than last time. Considering this will be Kizaru's first time...
I could imagine Kizaru, like, not, like, again, being overconfident, but he's also just a little too careless that he ends up blowing up something important.
Yeah. See, this is going to be Kizaru's first time fighting Zoro, because Zoro's not on death's door this time around. So he's coming into this being like, Luffy's the only one that might have to worry about. Then all of a sudden you're going to get bloody Usher Zoro coming out of nowhere, taking swings at Kizaru. He's going to be getting the lightsaber out, blocking it, just like, whew, why did I come in here alone? That being said, I'm going to wrap the stream up now. Thank you for coming through.
No problem, bro.
Until the next chapter of One Piece, or until the next video. Nothing but love, nothing but respect. Kuma, say goodbye, my guy.
See ya, everybody.
And, nothing but love, nothing but respect. Thank you guys and girls for coming through. Have a damn good day. Goodbye.